Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the budget retreat for the city of South Burlington on December 11th, 2025. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, and would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we'll have instructions on exiting the building in case of emergency and review of our technology options. Jesse Victor, City Manager.
Thank you. So I think you all know there's emergency here. You can go out left or right of the door and go either down the front staircase or back staircase and go outside. For those joining remotely, I think it's all internal folks for now. If you'd like to speak during any item on the agenda, please use the raise hand function in the webinar and we will unmute you after the chair calls on you. Otherwise, we are not monitoring the chat.
Thank you, Jesse. Item 3 is agenda review. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of the agenda items today? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on then. Item 4, which is a time for comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda today. Is there anybody online?
No, I think it's only Deputy Chief Briscoe.
Oh. So, okay, there's no members of the public in the room. Okay, then we'll move on to item 5, which is the fiscal year 27 budget presentation involving the Community Services, Recreation, Parks and Library with Adam Math, Recreation and Parks Director, and Bree Draper, Library Director. Some documents for that.
I'm going to close the participants for now, but I'll watch them on my computer in case anyone else wants. Thank you.
Okay. So Bree and I are going to be doing the joint community services presentation here, kind of the flow of it. We'll have a combined success slide, and then I'll hop into the rec and park information. Then Bree will dive into the library, and then we'll end with some joint emerging issues between the rec and the library itself. So the first slide here is a combined one again, kind of highlighting the successes between both recreation and parks when it comes to increasing our services and providing access to more residents. So I'll kind of jump into the rec and park little slide or little graph there. Overall, when it comes to our programs and events, we've seen kind of drastic increase. Some of the numbers behind them. So in 2023, for example, our community events were 34 and we offered 36 community programs. 2024, we jumped to 106 events, 67 programs. And then for 2025, we hit 179 events and then 72 programs. When it comes to like how we're determining success of those programs, it's more on kind of the impact, the accessibility of them and the community benefit, not so much how many people are attending them at all times. Each one is a little unique. Some of our most impactful things that we've done have been a lower number attended things like our adaptive programming or our SSDA shuttles, which we're offering to people that are being used on a limited basis. But I'll let Bree kind of jump into her graphs as well.
Well, I have a lot of data represented here, but basically everything in green is this year and everything blue is the previous year. So you can see we're kind of up in all of our measurable categories in various uses. So the library is rocking and busy, and we have the data behind it to prove it. And I want to thank Anna for helping make some of these graphs a little bit more clear and than the presentation last year. So thanks to Anna for helping us out.
So I appreciate what you said about how to measure the events, but I wouldn't mind also seeing the attendance of these
Yeah, we do have
Okay.
like our overall attendance
Yeah.
numbers, and a little bit later in the
Okay.
presentation, I'll talk about like our increase in like users in our platforms as well. So really quickly, I'll just kind of highlight who the recreation department is. So nothing has kind of changed from last year within our staff. So it's Rebecca, Travis, Brett, Kate and I. The one slight difference since we last met last year, Kate was a part-time employee, basically all through 2024 into May of this year. So as of now, we're finally like fully staffed following her completing school. Successes, just wanted to highlight a few of the things. Some of them kind of more overlap on like the calendar year in compared to like the fiscal year itself, but a few things that we did, we increased community garden access. There were different style of garden, but the raised beds at JC, we put in 20 over there. Those had a demand. I think we saw over 40 people like apply for them. We're looking to add a few more this upcoming year. Our event growth, just in the scope of some of the events that we've done. Last year, we implemented Art in the Park, which was kind of a test run for a farmer's market, which we're looking to do this upcoming year. Our 5K series was something that sitting here last December wasn't even kind of on the radar. We developed a kids club program that has over 350 kids in it. Our Social Pulse young adult group last year at this time wasn't a thing. We have over 200 members in there. And then also just highlighting our speaker series as well as our adaptive programming are a few things that, again, sitting last December, we weren't even planning on at that point. Participation growth within our registration platform. And this is just based off of events or programs that people are registering for. We do a lot of stuff that you don't register for. We saw 1,300 new like accounts. And then off of that, actually Anna put together a ton of numbers for me the other day. Within those accounts, family members, we saw 4,200 new users in our platform, which prior to 2025, we only had 5,800 new users. So basically it was like 43% increase on that. A lot of them came from the like young adult age demographic, which we've been focusing on. And then additionally, a large increase has come from surrounding communities. Obviously, we've seen a pretty drastic increase in South Burlington residents coming to our programs, but also surrounding communities, which I think is important to highlight for a few areas. There's added revenue that comes into it. So if you're a non-resident and you're registering for our programs or events, there's additional charges, as well as when it comes to budgets on the rec and park side of things. Burlington drastically cut their budget and basically locked a lot of their staff. And we have seen a ton of Burlington residents come over to us. Prior to this past year, we had 313 Burlington users in our system. Just last year alone, we had an additional 771 in our platform. Some of the revenues that come from non-users, actually, the amount of increased revenue on non-resident fees has covered our Kinder Pro and Tyke programming fees, which we've been able to eliminate. So that's just another increased revenue there. Expanded access and equity. Last year, we offered shuttle service to 35 events. Again, it's something that we didn't have takers for all 35 events, but it was important the times that we did, and people took advantage of them. Locations, we were at 20 different parks and locations throughout the city. Over 90% of our events were also no cost there. Some of the things on our budget for the upcoming year, I mean, basically it's status quo, for the same as far as major changes. There's a few increases in expenses around special events, and senior center events, just because that's kind of where our focus has been as a, department. That being said, with the expense increases, we've also, upped our revenue, increases as a general, like, overview of where we finished FY 25. If you took all of our operating expenses, not capital improvement projects, and then our operating revenues, we came out to each South Burlington resident was paying about $2 per month going towards recreation programs. So I think we pretty easily provide that value to the residents there. Some new capital improvement projects, which I know you guys had questions about the other day. I'll kind of hit on playground and then I'll jump into Red Rock. Playgrounds across the board, like, do need some additional enhancements. They're all definitely aging to the point, and they also aren't as accessible as a lot of offerings throughout the region are. So within the capital improvement project, we do have money allocated towards that, as far as pinpointing which specific park would be the first one to hit. That'll be something that the master plan will kind of help with. In addition to the general fund money on that, we do also have from a prior South Burlington resident donations. So we have about $80,000, which in total over a couple of years, we're looking to also put towards our playground improvement. Red Rock Bathhouse is something which we are in dire need of, and I do understand the master plan is still in progress. That being said, one of the first things that I did when I started here was go to Red Rocks, and it is embarrassing as far as the bathhouse itself, and whether the master plan comes across and says the Red Rocks beach should become a destination-ish type beach like it has been in the past, or not. Red Rock is still a regional park that sees thousands of people attending and going through it every year. It should have suitable bathrooms, even if those bathrooms are what were there in the past with showers, etc., or if we do something similar to veterans and just have real bathrooms there. If it's not, it's being a little proactive and not waiting on the master plan itself. But if we don't, then this process won't get rolling until FY 28, and then the planning doesn't start until late 2027, 2028, and then actual construction won't then start until 2029, etc. So my thought process in putting that in there was it's definitely needed. Let the master plan kind of help lead what in particular it is, whether it's veteran style bathrooms or beach house style bathrooms, but being proactive rather than reactive and just waiting more years to do something that should have been done a while back.
Adam, quick question. How are donations accepted into the city?
So that was just a one time, it was an individual who actually passed away, and it was $100,000 donation that we've kind of been splitting up over a few things. Some of it went to helping put in garden beds at JC, and then another 80,000 of it we're looking to do.
So does there have to be a foundation set up, or was it specifically left to the Rec and Parks?
Yeah, so this one was specifically left to the Rec and Park department, and unlike some others, I mean, it's the only one that like I've got since I've been here of this caliber. There wasn't a, hey, it has to be put towards X project or Y project. It was, it has to be put towards recreational parks department to enhance the offerings to the community.
Do you know if there's any restrictions on that, Jesse, at the state level?
I don't think there are any restrictions at the state level, but from time to time, this does happen across departments from time to time. where we get directed donations.
Yeah.
In theory, they are donating to the city of South Burlington, so they could be used for any purpose, but when they are left or given with a purpose, we help track them and finance us according to that purpose. So our policy is that it stays within the intended interest of the donor. So that's happened in fire, that's happened in immigration, the library, has happened in the police department.
Yeah, I mean, the school cannot do that by law. It has to be a separate foundation set up. So that's not been my experience, but.
And the funds and the expenses for those donations don't show up in the budget anywhere, is that correct?
That's correct. I've tried to use special funds so that they are not part of the general fund.
Is
Red
there
Rock-
any value in setting up a foundation? I mean, I'm struck by, there's a $40 donation for Red Rocks and I don't know whether is there value or is that just more work? And we don't want to necessarily pinpoint that.
So the library has a
Right.
foundation. So a foundation isn't necessarily something the city would stand up, it's something a group of interested residents would stand up.
Okay.
I think for recreation and parks. Coming out of the master plan, or in preparation for a rec center, or in preparation for a new veterans park, or in preparation for something else, a group of residents may want to come forward to do that. We would certainly provide information and guidance for them if they were interested in doing that, but it wouldn't be a function of a financial institution of the city.
But Red Rocks, repaired, so water and sewer work fine there now, but it's like this new toilets, new stalls, new urinals, new, all new.
I mean,
hardware.
I would highly recommend doing a quick tour.
And building
We're
repair.
busy right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's.
No, I believe you, I just want to know, it's like all hardware replacement and it, yeah. But like the floor doesn't need to be replaced, right, just.
I mean, it would be, that's part of what I'd like to kind of look at is like how suitable the building is. I mean, it is run down.
Yeah, we've
It
talked about
hasn't
this before.
Been like tough and it's.
There may be a question too, if we modernize it, would it meet current code? Like, could we do enough
Oh,
upgrades to have it? Would the upgrades we will want to do trigger some code requirement?
Do we have like, view of what the different repair paths would cost, just doing what Tim said, you're tearing down the whole building like Spectrum and what those cost?
No, which I think, I mean, part of it, and I guess that is kind of on like the proactive side, like. I would like to see the master plan also kind of help lead a little bit of what Red Rocks should become, because that would help answer some of that a little bit if they're saying, hey, it's never gonna be. The idea behind Red Rocks isn't gonna be this regional beach, then that would scale back a little bit of it as well, if that makes sense.
I appreciate your proactive approach to it. Because it's been moldering for a long time.
Some emerging issues that we have coming up, obviously the master plan itself, the impact and the resources behind it, indoor programmable space. So I actually do have a little bit of info on that, just to kind of highlight like where we're doing stuff. So this past year, we were at 16 different indoor locations. And then that's not even like different portions within those buildings. So that's counting like Rick Marcotte as one, Tuttle as one, even though we're using gym, cafeteria, classroom spaces. So like why I have that in there too is it's challenging for residents to know where we are. And where we're doing stuff. And it's also challenging for our staff to constantly be flipping around. We do have the senior center, which is amazing. It's limited on kind of what we can do in there, just space wise as well as activity wise. And it's our only location, so there are things that we do in there that really aren't like that's to be done in there, and then it's filling up the space that we can't do for something else. So basically January through May, and then October and November of 2025, we had external things in there, whether it was rec type events or rentals, 129 days out of 180 days available, not counting Sundays. I didn't take out holidays or anything in there, but when we set up a program, basically we block off the senior center from anything else, even if that program doesn't run. Unfortunately, we have to plan for it, and then we aren't able to do other stuff in there. The residential neighborhoods is a big thing for us, as well as multifamily housing and kind of how people are going to be utilizing the rec department, both our events programs as well as our parks themselves. And then staffing and seasonality. Right now, we're very still summer focused when it comes to our external events, which does create some challenges. Luckily, we do have increased our seasonal staff help, and that has got some of the burden on our.
And for indoor space, like what do you see? The short of a $20 million new indoor rec building, is it something you see? Like what would you think would be really helpful? Like what would you envision that space to provide in terms of services? What would it have?
I mean, like for us right now, the biggest challenge that we don't have is the like multi-purpose-ish style gym at our discretion. And that's the biggest impact. With it, like anything that would be indoor rec style would be nice to also have some classrooms associated with it, so that you can do the similar things, the language classes, the educational classes that we offer. But for us, where we have a challenge is it's that like multi-purpose type gym space that we just don't have. And there's a lot of things that would be nice to offer that we can't do downstairs in the senior center. So that's the biggest element.
I mean, that's a pretty large building though.
Yeah. Because for us, like the schools, we utilize them a lot. Once youth basketball starts, it impacts what adult programs we're doing in the schools. And the other side of the school element is there are times we'll schedule out programs or events in there. And rightfully so, when they all of a sudden have an event that they plan, we get booted out. So we do have like spaces where we can do other things. We are starting to do things in the library on the educational side, but it's in that multi-purpose gym size location where you can do active-ish type things that we don't do downstairs.
Getting into the Parks Master Plan, recreational space is something that's, a recreational center is something that was really highlighted by the residents, and so was a pool. And you see a pool being adjacent to a rec center, or do you see them being separate facilities, or have you thought much about that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to Andrew's like question. I mean, if you incorporate a pool into it, then it's going to get even like drastically bigger. As far as like, if there was a priority and it was indoor rec center or pool, I would definitely say indoor rec center. If the combined element of it prevented us from having a rec center, then I don't think the pool is as dire of an importance. Right now, residents who aren't going to the Edge or a private gym, like, don't have the access to, you can't get into the schools to use as a private citizen.
But an outdoor pool.
Yeah.
Still very expensive.
Yeah.
It is.
When I said pool, it could be indoor.
Oh, you didn't say that.
I didn't know, I said pool, generic. Indoor. Under a bubble.
Well, we're not putting a pool in at the library, but I want to introduce myself to you. I've met you all, but I'm Bree Droppa, and I have the distinct pleasure or unique pleasure of presenting on a year I was not here and on a budget I had very little input in. But I'm happy to say that I've been here a couple of months since October, and this is my 15th time presenting a municipal library budget, so I'm happy to answer all of your questions regarding this. I do want to just acknowledge and thank Jennifer Murray for her hard work and her 11 years of service as our former library director here in South Burlington, and this really stands on her shoulders, so I'm going to acknowledge that. And also just thank the staff of the library. There's including myself, 22 of us at the library. 7 are, 18 hours, it's 19 hours or less. And we have 6, kind of part-time other staff and 9 full-time staff. And, really we have our mission statement there, but kind of the short answer of what we do at the library is that we offer a free and welcoming space for the community to connect and engage. And that really kind of covers the whole scope of everything that we do at the library.
Free, can I interrupt a second?
Yes, please.
Erin, our children's librarian, was on Vermont edition yesterday.
Yes,
I
and
was driving home and heard her voice, and I was like, that's honored. That's honorable.
yesterday was a very media heavy day for the library because my episode of Across the Fence also was released on WCAX at noon. So if you were listening or watching TV at noon, you would have heard someone from the South Burlington Public Library recommending books. So I'll send the link out to my television performance and then Erin's radio one when they're available. Excuse me. So we had a lot of successes in FY25. You have this information. I made a handy infographic to talk about some of those numbers and successes. And I just think these numbers are incredible given the size of our community, if you look at that. And a couple of things to point out. We offered 853 programs at the library with, a healthy attendance. So it's not like just 2 people showed up to every program, but we had over 14,000 attendees at our programs, and that's anywhere from baby time all the way to informational programs for adults.
Do you count the programs where, I don't know, people rent or use the space?
No, those actually are, that number is also here. We had hosted meetings with a number of attendees, 11,977. So we do count those, yes, but not counted in as a library program.
Thank you.
We have a lot of checkouts, both digital and in person, and we have 11,240 active borrowers. So almost, a little over half of the population of South Burlington has their library card and is actively using it. We added almost 2,000 library cards this year, thanks to the efforts of staff and the board of increasing kind of the outreach efforts around library cards. And thanks to the voters and the city council for the budget increase to open on Sundays, and we're happy to be doing that on January 4th. So we'll be opening starting January 4th on Sunday. So lots of things going on at the library. I do want to highlight the partnership with the rec department, collaborating on a great events like Juneteenth, Screen Free Week, community dinners, Illuminate, and much more. And we've had meetings even this month to strengthen those relationships even more. So,
Do you have a number of distinct MAC addresses of laptops or phones or tablets that connected to your Wi-Fi? And you talked about this a year ago. I was curious.
Yeah, I actually talked to IT about that.
Yep.
Because I was interested in that as well. So we have our public computer sessions,
Yeah.
but that
That's your
over 6,
computers.
well, and that's those 8 computers
Yeah,
upstairs.
that's a lot.
So 8 computers drove over 6,000
Yeah.
logins. But yes, as you are aware, a lot of people bring their own devices, phones and all of that. I want to say the short answer is no. The more complicated tech answer has to do with tracking the whole building versus tracking the library as it's a shared IT services. But my hope is to work with IT a little bit more because I'm very interested in that data as well. Okay, I wanted to include a little bit of successes this year because I wasn't able to speak to a lot of the FY25 events, but just some successes we've had so far this year. The staff at the library has been flexible and wonderful as we transition between directors. I just want to give kudos to them. I also want to give kudos to the support team here in the city and the leadership team for welcoming and helping and answering all of my questions as I navigate this. So very appreciative of the help and support that I have received. And I know Jennifer was very touched and thankful for all the well wishes in her retirement. I'm having lunch with her next week, so we're still in touch. And the library is now also fully staffed, so that was a heavy lift, and that was also a team lift, not just for the library and hiring and staffing, but also for finance, for running those numbers, for HR, for helping out all of that. So I see this Sundays not as just a library win, but as a whole city win. This is a win for the city from your proactive budgeting in FY25 all the way to the whole team effort of everyone helping out to make this possible. Even, you know, Andy designing the great graphic that we have here that's going to be our logo. So I'm just really, really proud of that work. And then we're doing some new and exciting stuff. I just wanted to highlight the New York Times. You can now get the New York Times for free in the building and also free from your device outside of the building with a 24-hour code. So that's thanks to the foundation for, you know, kind of paying for that, but also thanks to everyone on the staff who helped make that possible. So team effort.
The 24-hour code, does that mean each day you have to get a new code?
You do, but you are logged into your account, so like your Wordle string will not go away. Your articles you save to your reading list, your recipes that you save on the cooking, that is all tied to your account.
Right,
You're just getting in with that code every day.
Right.
Once you're in, you have all
Got
of
it.
your own stuff. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty neat. And if you time it, it's 24 hours access. If you do your Wordle at 7 one morning and 6 one morning, it's code. So for the FY27 budget for our library, you know, you see the number there, and we also have a one-time use request. Our self-checkout machines, which are well used, there was data on that, are aging out of their useful life. So like all technology, there's only so much you can update.
5 years?
I know. And so the total cost for replacing the checkout machines is probably more in the neighborhood of $18,000, but we are using some of that reserve fund, those, you know, accumulated donations and all of that to supplement the cost of that. So we're asking the taxpayers for part of that replacement. And so that's what that $9,000 request is for replacing our self-checkout machines. They might not be the same machines being replaced due to kind of the quick life of these machines and the support, but also due to some changing technology. So, but that is the price to replace the existing, or half the price of replacing the existing self-checkout machines. A lot of our expense changes from FY26 to FY27 were primarily driven by staffing. We are a service industry, so our most expensive category is always our staffing, and along with that, the rising healthcare costs. So there's very little like wiggle room of things that we get to play with. I would say of the budget, it's about 15% of the budget that we can really control outside of staffing and utilities and things like that. And most of those items were either level funded or reduced. We did put in very slight increases into staff training. We have a lot of new staff, including the director. And so, you know, some staff training is important. And also we are dipping our toe into marketing a little bit more. We did not have a marketing budget at all. And so we put a small marketing budget in. And we're also supporting our Library of Things collection more, which is like the stuff you can check out because it's been very popular. And as we move to a demographic with more multifamily home users, you just don't have the space to store cake pans and, you know, metal detector and a pressure washer and tools and various things. Plus, you know, maybe you don't have the extra income to afford just those one-time use items. Our crutches go out all the time, by the way. So, you know, there's something that you don't need all of the time.
Knee scooter, you need a few of those.
We have one.
You have one?
We
Yeah.
have a knee
I
scooter.
see on Front Porch Forum all the time.
Yeah, we do. We do. You can come check it out at the library. We also have some revenue changes. We are seeing more room reservation increases, including the auditorium, so gaining some revenue of that. We also are seeing our printing and copying fees going up. We are not charging per print and copy anymore. We're just asking for a donation if you are able to. And that is actually increasing the amount that we're getting. So, you know, instead of, oh, well, here's 20 cents for my 2 copies, here's $1. And that's on the honor system, and you can pay by both cash and credit card and one of the Venmo or one of those kind of services. We are losing some revenue in our non-resident library card fees because Burlington is now part of the Home Card Library Consortium. So for a long time they weren't. And so many people who lived in Burlington would buy into that consortium, which is most of the libraries in Chittenden County and the surrounding area. And now they're part of that. So, so we're losing a little bit, but not much. Do you have any questions on any of that?
You see other opportunities for revenue?
Well, we're a library, so we can't charge for a lot of things. That's in state statute. So outside of kind of these ancillary services that the library manages, like room reservations, I really don't, because we can't really charge for things. If we offer classes, they need to be free. Yeah. So some kind of, I have emerging issues, but I also have priorities because issues always sounds a little dire. And I just wanted to have some positive things on here. The South Burlington Public Library really provides professional library services. The staff is high caliber, the facility is high caliber, and we just want to maintain that. And in a facility where everyone feels that they're being served. And, you know, keeping up with our high level of service, making sure staff has sufficient training and resources that are going to help them do their job. Also, openings on Sundays, kind of like okay, how's this gonna work? How's this will the people come? How's this gonna put stress on the building facilities? It's a whole another day of use for utilities and facilities. So how is that gonna kind of shake out throughout the year? And that's something that, you know, obviously we can track people who are coming into the building, but it's kind of a cross-departmental thing.
Can I ask, maybe you, Jesse, the library will be the only open regularly part of this building. Will there be any other staff, or will opening, closing, walking through to see that people are leaving at the time the library closes, things like that? What besides library staff will be?
So that happens a lot now, currently, whether it be evenings that the library is open till 7 and there's not a night meeting in the building. They're here. Otherwise, Saturdays, there are often other things happening in the building, but not always, so from that standpoint, that's not necessarily new for Sundays. We will have a public works on-call system, and of course, our police do walkthroughs of the building, fire's always available, we have staff. You know, on duty, actively on duty every minute of every day. But there won't be other city hall staff here on Sundays.
So will the rest of the first floor or the rest of the building be locked and unavailable?
Yeah, which again is how we operate now on Saturdays and in evenings when they're not night meetings. The only time there's open access to the third floor is when there's a public meeting, like right now, the building is wide open. Or when there's something in the senior center that will be open. Or if there's something in the auditorium that will be open, but we manage every day locking the building only for what the public needs access to.
So at 3 p.m. on Sunday, who does the final sweep?
The library.
The library.
We have a procedure for that
Okay.
anyway,
Yeah.
when it's 7 o'clock and there's not a meeting, you know, we as a staff. Close down the library building and then sweep the hallway, look at the bathrooms,
Yeah.
make sure that the building envelope locks. So we have a procedure for that. And that will be no different than Saturday. We'll get to it too, but you know, we might have more use of the senior center on Sunday. If the library's open on Sunday too.
Can I ask a difficult question? The gentleman that passed away in the library, was that because the sweep was incomplete that day or?
I did not do the sweep that night. That
You
was
did-
100% my
It
fault.
did not get done, okay,
I just, Colin and I were walking out that evening together and chatting, and I
okay.
just didn't look at the door to see that it was still
Okay.
up.
But normally you go in and if there's stalls, just, knock on the stalls and just, okay.
We also have, because facility staff here most evenings too, after the library leaves.
Yeah.
But the library as a group of us do go take that responsibility.
And will the rooms that are available now to rent by outside groups be available on Sunday as
Yes, we
well?
will, during that 9 to 3 period, and we do get a lot of requests currently that we have to turn away for Sunday.
Good to know.
So there's a little bit of increased revenue, another day of renting. So, we're also doing, trying to eliminate barriers in our service model. So really looking at our patron card categories. We just launched our interlibrary loan request form online. It's kind of soft launch. We haven't advertised it yet, but if you'd like to request a book, you don't need to come in and get a blue slip of paper. You can just do it right online from home. We're hoping to update more of our service models like that, so people don't actually have to come into the building to request things. And then with our new head of youth services, we're really looking at some our offerings for our youth programs. We're also partnering with the rec department a lot to, make sure that all the youth of South Burlington are served to the best of our ability, so. And then Adam and I kind of brainstormed some joint emerging issues. It's just with the increased development and being busier and more homes and more people down here in city center, there is a larger demand for the Parks and Rec and for the library. So staffing and resources will need to keep pace with that population growth. And as city council, that's kind of means some budgetary implications as we grow. Both of us, our staffs are our most expensive and valuable resource. So we're both service model departments. And so as we get busier, we might need more money, right? So, and then just, as we both are having neighbors who are unhoused or with mental or substance abuse disorders, then it's going to require some more training for our staff and more empathy. And also we're just hoping to reach all the residents of South Burlington. So perhaps some serving more marginalized and underserved populations. Who are we not serving? And finding that information out through data, through working with other groups to understand what communities we both could do better. And then also this navigating of weekend hours, Sundays, Saturdays, but especially the new Sunday hours. And we had talked about how that the senior center might see some rentals, like, I'll let Adam talk about that, but it's an issue, but it's also like a good problem to have as we navigate Sundays.
Are we gonna have a social worker next year? in UVM, do you think?
Not that, that was an internship program and, it's not right now, I mean, it's not a possibility, but it hasn't been brought to us.
So it's an issue that
Bring
UVM.
that to you.
Yeah, the challenge for us in funding or operationalizing that for a second year was one, a fit with a student.
Yeah.
And then two, because we're not social workers, we can't supervise, there needs to be a paired MSW supervisor. So it's kind of a three-way partnership, and we haven't been able to find that paired supervisor. If you have ideas, or if we'd like to talk to your folks, Bree, I don't know if you know, but Counselor Pugh taught at the MSW program at UVM for a long time.
She has
And I was on the board of Howard.
Right.
She's got some names. If you'd like to work your magic, go for it.
I mean, I know that Fletcher Free has a full-time social worker in their library, but their need is also greater. But as we were talking about yesterday in a meeting, you can't plan when an incident occurs. So, sometimes for the social worker, if they're here a certain number of hours as an intern, you can't guarantee something's going to happen during those hours versus others. But it's definitely something that we're always open to working with partnerships and educational groups to help, forward our students in their studies too.
We had a question. Jennifer brought up, I think last year, I don't know that it was a challenge, but it was children who were coming into the library and the library sort of assuming the parental or not assuming that role. And is that anything that library staff are seeing that there may be, and I don't know if there's a requirement that below a certain age, you have to be with a parent or guardian?
There is, we have a child safety policy, and actually that is just, going to be talked about at our January board meeting, with the library trustees. Because the age somehow got raised to 12, but it's always been advertised as 5th grade. So we need to walk that back down to 10, which is the standard among most libraries in Vermont. I mean, sure, kids are rowdy, but they're coming to the library. It's better the kids are in the library. We have the 10 and under or 9 and under need to be accompanied by an adult or a caregiver 16 or older. And the staff and youth services is handling it really well. I have to say right now, they're very proactive at kind of talking to the kids like, hey, you can't be here, you're like 6. Not that that's happened, but and we do have policies and procedures around that. And it kind of falls under the umbrella of our building use policy or, just our patron code of conduct. And so it's a subset policy of that. So we're definitely on this issue. And we also have an engaging base for our tweens. And we have our youth teen space as well.
So a little more history to add to that, Bree. We had a pretty significant turnover in our children's librarian staffing in the last year. And as we were hiring for those positions, really look for folks with skill sets, not just in very young children programming in the library, but across ages in the library. And I think bringing in that expertise has also shifted some of the culture of both the staff and the behavior in the library, because we're going to get better able to address it.
And we have a
And
staff.
honestly, one of my concerns has been with the density increasing in city center and potential work schedules and things like that, that the library,
It's the after school.
becomes the after school program, and which is great if kids are using it, but also it could mean a lot of unsupervised kids and a lot of, like you said, sort of enforcement of what the effect is.
Yeah, I think we're catching our early, I don't want to say violators because they're kids using the library, but we're catching those kids whose behavior is probably, needs a check-in, and we're checking in early. I'm fully confident in the staff. We also, one of our youth services fires, Jay is fully engaged in that older kind of teen, tweety group. That is like her service area. So we have, some people working on baby stuff and some people working on that kind of tween age.
How are, you and the staff doing with handling our target population? And their use of the library, et cetera, and do you feel you have adequate support there, or? And what do you see as far as that in terms of emergency?
Well, I mean, everyone is welcome to use the library. All of our neighbors are welcome to use the library. And honestly, like, sometimes it's not our unhoused, patrons who are the most vocal, about certain things, so.
That's what I didn't say.
So I would say that, do I feel supported? Yes, I always know if there is an emergency, our police and fire have our back in those. We actually had a meeting yesterday about some procedural things. And so big short answer is yes. Always it is hard to predict. We cannot make a policy or procedure about everything that's going to happen. But I feel like we have a good working relationship with, some folks who just tend to be a little bit more problematic in the library, and that is not a certain group of people, that is more individuals, and that could be any kind of individual. We have a great staff who's both empathetic and proactive. So, we've been able to kind of speak to people nicely, and that really solves a lot of problems. Rather than trying to kind of legislate or any kind of punitive stuff. So I think we've got that. I do think we need to write some better kind of if then safety procedures. But I've had great meetings with Sergeant Short, our community outreach. Steve Locke and I have been meeting about some of these things, and there's a lot of support for the good work that the library is doing.
So the staff generally feels safe.
Yes, I think that they, with increased trainings, they might feel safer. Training doesn't make you safer, it just makes you more capable to react. But I think as a group of studious people who work in the library, information is kind of our safety blanket. And so that feels good to our staff. So we'll do some more trainings, we'll do some more regular trainings just to, and Sergeant Short has got a whole bunch of ideas. And so,
Super. Thank you.
you're welcome. Did you want to talk anything about funding?
Nothing too much other than like with the library open, it'll increase. We do get some, like Sunday rental requests that right now is more challenging for us just from a staffing, standpoint, but that'll help. We'll start accepting those more at a higher rate with City Hall being open on Sunday.
Yeah, and we had talked about like, if we are open more on Sunday, that puts also more on facilities, that the building is going to get used more. And right now we have on-call facilities for Sunday. But as far as our cleaning staff who already work very hard, it's another day of working hard to catch up on. And so while facilities maybe isn't in here, and, this is our presentation, we have facilities in mind as well.
Okay. Any other questions? We need to move on. We're kind of behind schedule right now. But thank you very much. Nice presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
We're going to move on to item 6, which is the budget presentation for community development and planning. That's planning, zoning, community development, and economic development along Blanchard and Fall Common.
That's situated here. Alon, are you sharing? Yes.
Thank you for having us here today. Paul and I are going to work together to present the community development and planning and zoning budget, which is spread throughout many areas. I'll start with myself. I'm a team of one. I oversee the TIF district, especially from an administrative standpoint and implementation. There's a lot of regulatory compliance that goes along with the responsibility and the pleasure of having a TIF district in the community. I also work on community development and downtown vibrancy. Community development, that's a very broad term, but pursuing initiatives that help to build community in South Burlington and across boundaries. Downtown vibrancy, we'll talk about that a lot. And also, within the city, we have been building a stronger relationship with Green Mountain Transit and working to improve transit in South Burlington. I also serve as the commissioner for Green Mountain Transit as your appointee, and then Paul is our alternate. While Paul is an alternate, I want to say that goes to all of the meetings. And it's very, I think in terms of representing South Burlington and South Burlington's interest, it's important to know that both the appointed person and the alternate while not a vote, have an equal voice at the table for any meetings, whether we are appointed to a committee or subcommittee. So there are many issues, emerging issues, and things to follow at Green Mountain Transit. So wanted to call that out. And then I also support the Economic Development Committee and the Public Art Committee.
And then Paul Connor, Planning Zoning Director. You have a lot of interface with us. As you know, we cover two general areas: long range planning and development review, permitting, and enforcement. Our team is 5.5 folks. We have 4 committees, including 2 of them are statutory boards of the cities, and as well as the Housing Committee and the Energy.
So this year, for FY 25 and 26, you have been able to accept or adopt several plans. The very most, I think, community intensive plan was the Economic Development Strategic Plan, which sets a lot of policy and communication and other goals for South Burlington. The City Center Parking Management Plan, which really will allow our downtown to become more efficient and welcoming to folks. And then the City Green Feasibility Study. The TIF district is seeing a lot of success at the moment. The increment or the revenue that was collected increased from 1.1 million to 1.8 million. So a big jump, and that's due to the significant number of housing and commercial properties that have been opening and going onto the grant list in April 1 of the past 2 years. And then we've also kicked off a joint effort with planning and zoning and also with CCRBC to engage with property owners on San Remo Drive and to work with them on an area-wide plan. And part of that is to spur people to start thinking about and planning for additional development along both Dorset and San Remo in that part of what has been a very industrial neighborhood.
On the planning and zoning side, a lot of what we outwardly work on are things that, as council, you're seeing pretty regularly. As you know, we did 2 sets of substantial bylaw updates to match our regulatory environment to the aspirations of our plan on infill housing, zoning district consolidation, lining up to make sure that we have water and sewer service areas that match where we want to see infill housing and where we want to see land use conservation, increased heights in city center, removing pain points in the development process. And of course, addressing specific topics like bedrock removal, transportation demand management, and a whole slew of others. We had two really large years in terms of new housing that is still in the process of coming online. So these, what you see on this chart is the permits. Some projects take 6 months to build, some take 14 months to build. So we're still seeing those two really large blue ones are parts of it are just opened this year and some of it is under construction still. What we've seen as a trend on the development side is it's been a little bit quieter the last couple of years in terms of permits for new housing. Some of that has to do with a lot of global uncertainty that nobody would be surprised about. Some of it has to do with cost. Some of it has to do with our development community is not that large in our area, and they tend to work in their own cycles of work in terms of plan a project, design a project, construct a project, launch a project, then start over. And one of our observations is that with the pandemic, everybody sort of got on the same cycle. And so it's not a huge surprise to us, in addition to all the global things, that in our specific market, a lot of the folks who would be doing their next project are wrapping up construction in their last project. So the last 3 or 4 months, we're starting to see a lot more questions to our department that are the precursors for the next thing, where it says, hey, we're thinking about doing a project. What's the lay of the land? Which means that the DRB would likely see a project starting in, the summer, that kind of thing. In the meantime, what we've seen a lot of in the last year are, again, sort of relay the cycles, public and quasi-public projects coming through. And I think that suspect that has a fair amount to do with the influx of funding from ARPA and the Inflation Reduction Act and all those big federal programs. So we saw a lot of work at the airport. We've seen a lot of work through our partners at CWD. Our own departments have been really busy with stormwater projects, wastewater projects. So that's a big chunk of what we've seen the last little while. The other side of our work that is maybe a little less outwardly visible, I was really excited that we got to follow recreation and parks and library. And a lot of what they talked about in terms of what their drivers are involve us as partners. And so both of them talked about the changing demographics of our community and how we're becoming a multi-family, primarily household community. We do a lot of partnerships with them as they're doing their work at forecasting the future, becoming integrally involved in the economic development strategic plan and the active transportation plan and the parks and open space master plans. And I think that is a really amazing reflection on, while we talk about departments for budgetary purposes, we're not a siloed city. We work across departments to serve our community as a whole. So that's.
Hey, Paul, do you just have the actual numbers? I can kind of see approximately 400, like the numbers for 22, 23, 24.
Yeah, they were the two big ones are in the 430 to 440 range each. And then the last 2 years are, I think it's 92 and 86 as of today, 86 this year.
Okay, and the
And
second bullet says permits for 400. Is that, what year is that?
So Jesse caught an error.
Oh.
I included an extra year in there. So that was a year backwards. So the correct number is 126 in the last 18 months. So
Last 18 months. So then that's
so if you went
that incorporates
30
from
months.
86 to 92, in other words. So
right. So
Okay.
it incorporates the last since July, the 126 is since July 1st of 2024. Yeah, we're in 2025 now. If you go back 12 more months, it's the 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the 2012 and 2014 are those graph glitches where you have negative permits for single family homes?
No, that was when homes were removed by the airport. So as a net, we were
Oh,
down
so
in
it's
the
the
number of
net,
single family
The
homes,
net,
yeah.
okay.
So it's important, I think, as we record our data, that we're acknowledging
Yeah.
when we go down, because it's, while we mostly
Yeah.
see homes added in
Yeah.
those 2 years, we were a net reduction in single family homes in the city. Not net across the board, but in
Yeah.
that house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting,
Yeah.
sad. I can see you didn't notice or note here the accomplishment of getting the Pizza Hut torn down, but thank you.
There was a Facebook program where you could buy buttons.
Yes, I have one.
Oh, good, I'm glad to hear. We could see if we could find a button that just doesn't have the building on it too. No, that was a long effort by many people. And it's exciting to see not just that it's gone, but that there is development going upwards, as South Burlington is a community with a lot of different gateways to it. And that is one of the gateways. And so it's exciting to see, and I know that that's been a shared goal of both the property owner and ourselves, to have that corner really begin to represent what it really should be, which is one of the gateways to our city.
I think city council was happy to sign that document.
I imagine, as were we to see you sign it.
Tim, when you speak, could you speak a bit louder?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
So in transit, working with Paul and outside consultants, we were able to use data to work with GMT and other partners to shift both the frequency and the service where buses went particularly on Market Street. So having 15-minute service on Market Street has been a huge change for residents and for GMT, which has been very positive. And it also, for us working with GMT, it showed them that even in a time when service is being cut, that service could still be improved. So that was a huge win. The other thing that Green Mountain Transit has been going through over the past year is that they have been working with the state to transfer all of their local transit that is outside of Lee County. So to Franklin County, to Middlebury, other places, that service is being transferred to other providers so that they can focus on the urban mission. And so that's a huge change that they're still transitioning through, and they are still working through what that means for FY27.
So, if I might, might there be any benches? Especially perhaps in front of the senior housing, and things like that, or at least a place where people might be able to sit for those times when the buses aren't quite coming every 15 minutes.
That is a great question, and I am fully on board with what you're saying. And I think that one of the things that the transfer from of the rural service is that it will give GMT more staff capacity to focus on what the service improvements could do for the service, and to work on more programs like improving bus stops, improving communication. But as I said, we haven't received their proposal yet, but I think that's a very important thing.
And I realized it was a huge success to have them reroute through Market Street, and people love that. I, in terms of where I live, have heard a couple of comments about how do we get to the airport now? And is there any thought of, since Tilly Drive is becoming this healthcare campus, is there any thought about having bus transportation there? And I realize it's probably out of your control, but whether or not that is anything
Yeah.
that we're looking at.
Yeah. So within the city plan is a connection between here and Shelburne Road. That being said, I think there's a strong interest in continuing to use data to drive service change. So even though we're in an environment where we're seeing increased costs and a need to reduce costs or increases in costs at Green Mountain Transit, I think from the city side, we are expressing a strong interest in how can we make service better and bring in other revenue sources or improve the revenue sources that we have to bring people where they need to go. I will say that Tilly Drive does have a service that's funded by UVM Medical Center. It's an on-call service, so it's not a fixed route service. And you have to know about it to use it as is key to all. So, but definitely continuing to work with DMT and our surrounding communities to advocate for transit that goes to places that people need to go.
Bringing South or Shelburne Road to Williston Road or to Third Street would be great to not have to go downtown
Yeah,
first.
and we have heard at board meetings that that they are looking at the hospital connection and restoring that connection, but they have not come forward with it.
Big picture, as Alana said, this in a environment where a year and a half ago, what we heard from Green Mountain Transit through VTrans was that we should all need to be prepared for service reduction. Using a data-driven approach to say, how can we, improve service in some areas while we're addressing this, I think has been really buoying to all the parties in this, that data-driven decision-making can be really helpful. And so we have worked with Green Mountain Transit to look at what are the existing, what are the anticipated future population centers along Shelburne Road, along City Center. And I think big picture, what we're trying to collectively do is build a strong web of service that is long-term resilient and can not cut ourselves into the future, but build financial success so that we're in a place where we can not just restore, but add service in a way that is financially sustainable. And this was the very first step of that. And I think as we look to the next few years and we, the more urban focus, and we can make the clear case about, say, a Shelburne Road to City Center to the hospital connection, and why a route like that, where there are people who have reason to be getting on and off throughout the route, as opposed to sort of the typical very rural to very urban, where it gets, people get off and off and off and off and off the bus, to where when it's at the end, there's very few riders. If you can have one in a web where there's riders throughout the service, that can help build resiliency.
So one of the things that we are really, to that last point, one of the webs that South Burlington is really in now that we countered with the Market Street bus was Green Mountain Care Board requirements around transportation through the health network, and UVM's interest in maybe permit requirements around transportation of their staff. So what we were really, so we have a lot of buses that are running through our city that are not open access buses, that are solely for health network employees or UVM employees. So one of the things beyond just the Green Mountain Transit we're trying to work on is to Alana and Paul's points, how do we build open access bus networks supported by the institutions to have one bus go for everybody, as opposed to the hospital to Tilly Drive, skipping all the stops in the middle.
Thank you.
As per the presentation that Jesse gave, there are few significant changes, but a few that you have already started to have discussions about that I'm highlighting here. One is the Economic Development Strategic Plan implementation. That includes funding for an economic development director. That is part of the proposed general fund budget. And also launching support for funding in one-time using one-time funds. So support would be funds that the economic development director can use to implement the strategic plan, depending on the priorities that are developed. And so that would be a one-time recommendation, and then looking to see how that their concept of implementing the plan is built into future budget. I'd also like to highlight the request from South Burlington City Center Collaborative for funding, one-time funding, use of one-time funds to support their mission in FY27. They will be presenting to you on January 5th. And then Green Mountain Transit in their FY27 assessment, there was an increase of 42,000, that's a 6% increase that is built into the general fund. They also had one-time funds to support transit planning and advocacy, and that is built into the general fund, I believe.
Sorry, what?
No, that's different, sorry. There is a one-time in your policy option budget, there is a one-time allocation of funding to support transit planning and advocacy. We think Green Mountain Transit is going to be looking at service hub that we'd like to similarly the way that we get up to date service market street data and our and other transit experts to help inform that. Then request that is not built into the budget, and that is for local assessment for there's currently service between senior the burden that's done it and that $3,000 and $3,000. So
Lana, can you remind me or us what's in the one-time funding development strategic plan? I think that was about 85,000. What was in there specifically?
So that is specifically to further whatever the policy goals and objectives are for FY27. But it's in order that the economic development director comes into the city and has, rather than have the zero budget, that is funding available to carry out whatever the priority.
So it's things like consultants or doing new branding or marketing materials or dedicated.
But is it at the discretion of an executive director?
Well, of an executive director.
Or the director?
Yeah, it would be their recommend, so it's funding aligned for materials, promotions, and consulting aligned to the year one task of the economic development strategic plan.
And there was nothing more specific than that,
No.
just thanks.
And yes, in theory, an economic director would advise on that, but it would go through the same process all of these departments.
Just want to say that the success that you guys had with BMT community was exceptional, and a shout out to Mike, who's not here anymore, because he put a lot into it. So the one-time funding for transit planning and advocacy, I think is a really key. Yeah, right here. Looking back at the peak. What happened this time around again? So.
Absolutely. So I didn't go over that yet. So from the planning zoning budget perspective, as Jesse spoke about for the general budget, there's really not a lot of changes in our department budget. We've trimmed a few lines where the expenditures over the last few years were below the what the actuals were, and so that's some of the savings that you identified. The one area we did want to highlight, is, in this anticipated Act 250 Tier 1A status. So, the new legislation that came out a year and a half ago, Act 181, created a whole bunch of new things. One of them was the regional future land use maps, that, the council got a presentation on back in May, that lay out sort of at a high level, the, on a consistent manner, future land use across the state, and that identifies areas of future downtowns and village centers, areas of planned growth, areas of transition, and a whole pool of categories of rural. So where the intent is, this is conservation and agriculture, forestry, working lands. Paired with that, the legislature reformulated the threshold for Act 250. So historically, Act 250 kicks in at either 10 homes or 10 acres of non-residential development statewide. In the last few years, the legislature put in some interim raised thresholds where in areas served by transit, essentially, the threshold is raised to 50 homes rather than 10 homes or 25 homes, depending on the category. Those are interim for the next few years. Under this legislation, there become essentially 3 tiers of Act 250 thresholds. Tier 2 is business as usual, how it has historically been, and that is most of the state. Tier 3 is for very specific natural resources existing, for the most part in the most rural parts of the state, but in little spots of certain rare and significant natural communities throughout, where the threshold for Act 250 kicks in if you're going to touch that resource at all. And then tier one, which in and of itself, has 2 subcategories. One essentially takes the temporary exemptions of thresholds of 25 or 50 homes and makes them permanent. The city has already opted in for that for our areas where we are anticipating development. And then tier 1A is a full Act 250 exemption. So municipalities have the ability to apply for this, starting after the regional plan is adopted by the state new review board, so summer of 2026, to have the areas that we have already identified and are identified in the regional plan as planned growth areas and our downtown and village centers. If our regulations meet certain thresholds established under, or certain criteria established under statute, and if we demonstrate that we have the capacity to do thoughtful land use planning and management of our own regulations, then these areas become fully exempt from future Act 250. We take on the responsibility of administering existing Act 250 conditions. And there's a process in there where if an applicant, let's say the U-Mall comes in and they want to change their prior approval because they want to build a new building, the local DRB looks at the existing Act 250 conditions and either reasserts them or modifies them depending on what the local community's regulations are as to determine whether they remain relevant. So that's the backdrop to that. The council's direction to us has been to move forward with this. So we have been preparing ourselves administratively for that. We've been developing a couple of areas where we needed to bolster our regulations that we've been working with the planning commission on. And then from a budgetary perspective, we have currently a half-time position that we are anticipating in order to properly administer all this would become a full-time position. We see this as an opportunity to be revenue neutral because in these areas, there is a substantial savings going to be taking place for the development community for not applying for Act 250, and we can recapture a portion of that, still provide a savings to the development community for not going through a double permitting process, but recapture a portion of that as revenue to administer the work that we will be taking on.
How would we recapture?
by increasing our fees for areas in the tier 1A, which would be an increase over what we've gotten, but a reduction of for the developers who've been paying 2 permitting fees.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So to summarize, in the past or currently, there have been 2 paths for approvals and permits, Act 250 and local.
2 layers, yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in the future, they'll combine into one where the local will take over the Act 250 responsibilities, creating one path with the developer and not 2 paths, right?
Largely, yes. So
Yeah.
taking over historic permits,
Right.
but we're not moving forward. It's only our local regulations.
Right.
We're not
Administering.
administering future Act 250 permits.
Right.
We're just administering prior conditions of and determining their relevance in the future and enforcing as appropriate. Yeah.
That, Paul, that's in specifically designated areas, right?
That is correct.
So
So
what
in
does
our,
that mean for Act 250 permits in outside those areas?
business as usual for that. For the most part, those are areas that very rarely, frankly, see Act 250 permits because there are rural areas. The one exception to that is the airport itself. The airport is considered a special use category under the state legislation. That doesn't qualify for this Act 250 Tier 1A, or Tier 1D, so they would remain in Act 250 under the nature of the regulations.
So pretty much at the end of this, Act 250 won't apply to South Burlington. Well, great.
With the exception of the airport, and with the exception of something taking place in a rural area that probably doesn't trigger Act 250, but as an example, Tom and I were speaking the other day, Red Rocks is subject to an Act 250 permit. Red Rocks is considered a conservation rural area, so something taking place in Red Rocks already has an Act 250 that remain in Act 250. So I'd say for the most part, most of what we're going to see is not going to be in Act 250, but there will be some exceptions.
So is tier 1A for the whole city or just for the downtown core?
It's for so that would be your choice to, upon your application. Right now, we are moving, we are aiming, the direction that we have is for our downtown, our villages, which is along Shelburne Road, in certain areas and at the corner of Kimball and Kennedy. And what's called the planned growth area, which is essentially our areas served by water and sewer and planned to be served by water and sewer. Those would all be eligible. The areas that you have identified in your sewer ordinance as being not served by sewer would not be eligible. And therefore not applying. So we've tried to line things up so we're not slicing and dicing 12 different ways. We're trying to, and I think the city's been really successful in matching all of our different policies. So we're making the same policy decision and we're being consistent, we're being clear, we're reinforcing where we want conservation of rural areas, and we're supporting in areas where infill is appropriate.
And do you know about when this change will take place?
So the window for us to apply for Tier 1A will, the window, whichever the right expression is, opens sometime in the summer of 2026. And it's about a 5 to 6 month process to obtain the status, looking at their public hearing status.
So we're happy to continue to answer any questions you want to about this today. There was, Council Chalmers did have a request for an agenda item in the future about the land use map, which is what drives all of this conversation. So I think it might be worth coming back to you in January and February with a more intentional presentation, trying to answer some of these questions.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, why it's here is that it is a change we anticipate making in the next year, but we don't believe it will have a budgetary impact, which is why we wanted to reference it here. But we can certainly have a much more intentional conversation about this in the coming months.
So you're not putting in a request to move the part-time position to full-time?
Not right now.
Thank you.
So I think you're very familiar with the FY27 capital improvement plan in terms of what is happening with City Center. But just wanted to give you a recap. You know, the walk bike bridge over I-89 is scheduled to be in construction. Garden Street, the section between the existing Garden Street that has been developed by the private sector and Midas Drive is also scheduled to be in construction. These are all projects, by the way, that are being led by Public Works. They just happen to be in the city center, part of the capital improvement plan. And then the Wilson Road streetscape is currently in right away, so it's being lined up to be put out to bid for construction. And then on the administrative
Did we
side,
have it right away, Chris?
yes, we do need right away.
Did we get it?
We have right away from some people, but not
For
from,
the school, did we get it?
not yet,
Or for the bike path?
for the bike path.
Still
Yeah,
not
for-
for the school.
Still,
Well, I mean, they've been through some transition.
okay,
So I've talked to the interim superintendent about it. It's on our agenda
Good.
for our meeting.
Yeah.
I don't hear any concerns from him, but there's also a brand new school board that will need to be briefed on what it is, so we will spend some time doing that. with him. I think we're in a very different situation with that right away than we were 9 months ago.
And then on the administrative side, there is some reserve funds that is being allocated towards citywide public art. And that is mainly for setting the city up for future acquisitions, but not the actual acquisition. So it would be for honorariums, for example, for art or design costs related to a future fiscal year acquisition, but not for next year. So emerging issues, infill development, we've talked about San Remo Drive. There are other opportunities, both within the TIF district and outside the TIF district. There's, with the changes in permitting and zoning, it creates a lot of opportunities, and that we as the city can do more to communicate, with property owners, and investors and developers, what those opportunities are and how they might want to think about South Burlington in a different way. So that's a huge thing that we're using San Remo Drive to learn about, that will help us move forward. And not that we are already having those conversations, but how do we do that in a more collaborative and structured way. The Public Art Committee is very interested in not just that, but a cultural plan is something that many communities do, and they have made that request before, and they are likely to make that request again. Or working towards that request that would come to the city council for one-time funding. We are always developing strategic partnerships, and those partnerships, not just in infill housing, but with the many other plans that are either in recommendations in the city plan or in many of the plans that we've mentioned, using those partnerships to reach city goals and initiatives, or for the further initiatives, and then continue on community building. We don't have a formal program to support neighborhoods or communities or affinity groups to build community. So we actively work with communities, but we don't say to a community, if you want to organize your neighbors or do something that brings you together and creates connection, we don't have a structured program to do that. So we do it sometimes upon request, but that is not something that we offer in an equitable way or across the board to our community. That's.
Yeah, and I think we've covered some of the emerging subjects, long range. We're looking at how is our community changing and participating across all departments on planning for that. We've highlighted some of the key plans here. We're working on impact fees for the fire department, recreation department later this year. 2 planning and zoning specific topics in the coming year that we're anticipating moving towards, both of which are highlighted in the council's policy priorities for this year to begin are planning for a Shelburne Road Center. So as we think about creating a focal point, a place, a village center, whatever we want to be calling it, likely centered around where the Larkin Terrace building is at Fayette and Shelburne Road, as an area that has both some new energy in it. It's near the school. It's at a signalized intersection, and there's room for a lot of infill in that area. So we are doing our initial work on that now. It's already been represented in some of our planning efforts, like the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and the next step will be to be doing master planning in that area. And then also identified in the council work plan is airport adjacent area planning. So that includes most likely the focus area being where the rec path recently came in. That was something that came out of the subcommittee of the Planning Commission a couple of years ago to study this area as a whole. The airport is also, as a whole, seeing a lot of change and transition and a huge investment taking place. And so while the focus of this will be the west and north side, as a department and as a city, we're working very closely with Beta and other partners in that area around building a thriving, again, part of the not part of the city, but also we.
On the Green Mountain side, on the Green Mountain Transit side, the agency is in the process of working with member municipalities to revise their assessment tool. Part of this discussion is also long-term financial sustainability and a sustainable funding source. However, the project mainly focuses on the member assessments and how legible the assessment formula is, and what factors go into it. And so they've had several meetings today, which Jesse has been involved in. And we expect that to continue to evolve over this fiscal year and possibly into next fiscal year. And then a big goal that has been brought up by many board members is to develop a strategic vision for Green Mountain Transit, especially as they become a solely urban service agency. What are their purposes as an agency in their service delivery model?
Great, thank you. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break for everybody and come back and proceed with the fire department. Thank you, Alana and Paul, very much.
Thank you.
Bye. So we'll resume. Thank you. We're back at item 7 on today's budget presentations for the fire department. Stephen Locke, Fire Chief, and Chris Corbin, the deputy fire chief.
Good morning. Chris and I will be tag teaming this presentation. So we want to start with really our organizational chart. We have 46 allotted positions. We are fully staffed. We break our personnel really into prevention, which there are 5 people assigned to prevention, 39 in operations. So 3 groups of 13, minimum of 10 firefighters on 24 hours a day. They work a 24 on, 48 off schedule. With every 7th shift, someone gets the day off. So it gives them on an average a 48-hour work week. And most of them report up through Chris. Then ultimately, John Chrisman is our new fire marshal who is replacing, who replaced longtime Terry Francis. And now, with the rental registry, the addition of 2 staff members there, actually 2.5 staff or 2.25 staff. So talk about successes and initiatives. Our call volume continues to increase. We're tracking about a 4% call volume increase this year. We'll push about 5,300 emergency calls for service. We had earlier in April of this year a significant change in our deployment model, where now we no longer send fire trucks to every medical call. So we reclassify our medical calls from either medical or medical high priority. The dispatcher makes that determination based upon what the information they receive from the caller. So there's about 7 call types that get you a medical high priority incident. So about 58% of our medical calls are classified as medical, so they're a single unit only. So we've seen about a 30% drop in our movement of our fire trucks, and over a 10-year usage of a fire truck, that's a significant cost savings that will come from that. That was really a creative endeavor between us and our local, the firefighters union, to come to a best way to deliver the services or put the people in the right place at the right time. Rental housing, I'll talk about we had over 3,200 units of rental housing registered this year. So we're just completing the second year of that. So year one, we had about 2,600 units. That was under one system, and then we went to online permitting this year and have had about 32, just over 3,200 units of housing so far this year. And that will be next year will be a much more automated process for renewal. So everyone that registered of these 3,200 units will get an email automatically to renew. Whereas this year they had to do manual again. So it was 2 years in a row manually, but similar to dog and cat licenses. If you registered your dog, you're going to automatically get that with a new online permitting system. So it should bolster our renewal rate. Yes.
About that. Right now it's, is there any plan, or does it not make sense to, be proactive? Like looking at, I don't know, Airbnb and that, to see what are being identified in town, and perhaps they haven't yet understood that they're supposed to, be a rental register.
So we subscribe to a service that monitors all the rental register platforms, VRBO, Airbnb, and Patty is somewhat of a little bit of a detective. She monitors those and sees if you have registered. And if you haven't, she starts with, hey, I see you renting your house out. And then she says, well, were you renting it out pre the ordinance, which gives you a 5-year window to continue? Or say, sorry, you cannot, is not in compliance with our ordinance, and you can no longer use it as a long-term rental, as a short-term rental. You can convert it to a long-term rental. So that happens currently.
And Tim Berg mailing print porch forum screenshots.
Yes, that happens quite frequently.
Do we have an idea of what total rental units are within South Burlington? Just a ballpark.
So when Paul and I started this endeavor, we projected about 3,200 units, and of those, about 850 are permanently affordable. And right now, that's where we're tracking, understanding that half of this street is not in these numbers, because you get a 3-year window post construction before you have to start complying. Nor is 327 Lime Kiln that had the fire. They're not in these numbers when that building gets rehabbed and reoccupied, those will come in there. So we're where we think we are. Ultimately today, I think I saw 4 rental registries come in today.
So you got most of it.
I think we do. I mean, we certainly have all the big ones.
You're getting close.
We certainly have all the big ones.
And another quick question on the medical incident response. Was there ever a scenario that, based on the dispatcher's judgment, you needed to send a second unit?
Oh, sure, happens all the time. Probably once or twice a week. 2 people will go out, they'll get there. Perhaps it's an obese patient that they can't move with just 2 people. Perhaps they get there and what they thought they were going to is not what they find, and they call back for help. Or the officer reads the call notes and says, that sounds a little dicey to me, I'm just gonna start sliding that way. So that happens almost daily basis, but I would say this, they get it more right than they're wrong.
Did the software
My
help?
question.
Software, we could have done it without the software. Because otherwise it's starting to, because we're sending closest available unit, and then depending on the call type, it sends the right unit. So if it's a cardiac arrest, it's sending 6 people or 7 people instead of 5 people. So it's all completely based on call type and location, who the computer's sending.
So it decreases call out, it decreases Fuel usage, increases wear and tear in the truck, on trucks.
It's huge. I mean, we estimated it would be between 50% and 60% of medical calls would be, the low, I hate to say lower priority, but that's what they really are. And since April, it's been 58%. So tracking right where we thought it would be.
And that, you don't feel that creates any liability though.
No, I mean, I grew up in a system where two people went to a medical call. I think ultimately we're putting the right resources where they are. There are times when you show up with two people at a CPR where you didn't think it was gonna be that, and for those, it does put an additional workload for a few minutes, and then the cavalry shows up. So we have very well-trained, well-prepared staff that handle the things every day and has not been an issue.
We're probably better off providing a more solid service to the community by keeping those units available when they probably don't need to be there. And I think it's also important to say, get it right more than they get it wrong comment. The dispatchers are never getting it wrong per se. They're usually the wrong is the person calling 911 isn't explaining the situation perfectly. Along with that, so we implemented computerized station alerting this past year. That ties directly into our cloud-based computer-aided dispatching system. So not only does one system talk directly to the other, it's a system that has a couple extra benefits besides just convenience. First and foremost, it allows us to only dispatch, especially at nighttime, the unit that needs to be responding. Which allows better health and safety, rest and recovery for the people that are working overnight that don't need to go to those calls. They're not awoken to a call to just say, oh, I don't have to go to that. I can go back to sleep. It also allows for a unity of service between us and Burlington. So we've recently been able to put in all the appropriate radio and dispatching systems for us to be Burlington's backup dispatch center and for them to be our backup dispatch center. So if Burlington needs one of our units, or if our dispatch center needs to be abandoned for some emergency reason, or just work overload, whatever the case may be, Burlington dispatchers can dispatch our units with that station alerting, just like we could dispatch Burlington's units with the station alerting. So it saves a lot of time. It also is fully automated, so the dispatchers have a lot less workload. They actually don't talk on the radio now, and we really don't talk to them on the radio now. It's all done electronically. We took delivery of our first new apparatus in well over 10 years. In February, we got a new ambulance. It was important for two reasons. One, our ambulances were outdated, but number two, in July, we started staffing the second ambulance, as you all know, 24/7. So this increased our fleet to 3 ambulances, 2 frontline and 1 reserved. So that was a big step forward. There is as I'm sure you've heard us talk about in the past, a pretty dramatic change in fire and EMS apparatus over the last several years, where we are now finding ourselves having to order fire trucks and ambulances 24 to 36 months ahead of time, because that's the time frame that it's taking. So, just as we're starting to get a new ambulance in service, we're already thinking about buying 2 out. So that's important. And we have, along those lines, in July of this year, we'll receive another new ambulance, and then sometime in FY27, we'll need to start thinking about ordering another ambulance to take delivery in FY30, which when we get to capital plan, we'll talk more about that. And then we're completing a year-long officer development program right now. So for succession planning, and also because of the young age of our organization, we've spent the last year conducting an in-house officer development program. 13 of our senior firefighters up through our lieutenants and captains have all participated. We've used a certificate program through Columbia Southern University as a foundation for it, which has allowed us to not only have a vetted educational program to deliver to them, it also provides them college credits at the end. And we've brought in national subject matter experts in the industry throughout the country here throughout the last year to present that information. So it's an exciting program. We'll finish up. We were supposed to actually finish it today, but because of a little schedule snafu, we'll finish it up next month. And then we'll be in a lot better place for succession planning in the future for our leadership.
in what Chris is going to do in 26, calendar year 26, is there's about half the department that's really junior. We're gonna start doing some leadership stuff with them to try to kind of build on to the same succession plan we started. FY 27 budget, really very little change in terms of the expenditure side of the house, but what we did see was an increase in revenue of about 300,000, which is directly correlates to the putting that second ambulance in service, and it just has generated more revenue than what we had anticipated. But with that comes increased usage of supplies, medical supplies, and then our billing and what a fee we pay to the state are directly proportional to what we collect. So the state takes 3.3% of what we collect, and ambulance billing is about 4.5%. So as we raise our revenue projections, we're really forced into raising those two lines.
What does the state do with that money?
So it's very interesting. It's an initiative. I was going to use the word scheme, but I thought where they take those dollars that they collect and they match it against federal dollars to increase our reimbursement. So in theory, we pay them about 70,000, but because of increased Medicare and Medicaid money that comes back, we're supposed to net out about 100 grand to the positive. It is.
Does that work?
Yes. I mean, it works on paper. I mean, you don't see the math, you just know the money goes there, and then the money comes. Our reimbursement rates go up slightly. So about 80% of the patients we transfer are Medicare, Medicaid, and that's a fixed percentage. So it doesn't matter what we could bill them $2,000, $3,000 a run, we're going to get $347. So
the other question is, we authorized last year the ability for you to have medical treatment only by the ambulance service, and how is that going?
So we do that. It's just not. I mean, a lot of those are either self-pay, so you don't get that. We don't. I mean, so it is working. We are billing for it. Is it a high amount? No. Everything comes back to Medicare, Medicaid, and so
will Medicare pay that?
Medicare will not pay for.
Will Medicaid pay that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's all. There's certainly a lot of discussion about what's happening with Medicare, Medicaid. Yeah.
Steve, or Chris, does your department do the billing?
So we hire it out to a company out of Essex.
And between supplies and billing, is there any opportunity for a regional effort there?
Regional billing provider?
Something that it consolidates where there's some economies of scale, and also for supplies.
I would say that our billing provider does several of the services in the area. And Burlington and Williston use the same. I'd use a different. So I bid the one that Burlington uses. They pay about 1% less than what we pay. There was a decision made earlier that going local was a former council in like 2016 or 17 made that decision, and they've been a good partner, and for 1%, it didn't seem like it was worth the other companies out of and they've made some changes. The other companies out of Wisconsin, so I would say, and then with ambulance supplies, almost everyone is using the same vendor. So
I think they are regionalized just in a
different manner. We are seeing people use vending machines now in firehouses where the vendor just stocks the vending machine for the majority of the drugs and things that we would use, and then the crews just go in, swipe a card, put their punch code in, kicks out what they need, and then the system automatically reorders and replenishes it. So I mean, that will be something that for quality control, we will end up going to eventually. It's the natural progression about how to control med administration.
How does it work today?
So currently we have stuff's on a shelf, and when they realize it's low, and it's a QR code, and someone orders the stuff, we close.
Oh, okay. So it's on a shelf. It comes in a box.
Yeah.
Delivered by Amazon.
Exactly.
Not Amazon, but pretty much.
FedEx.
Yeah, they show up just as much as Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the regionalization, I know, and buying from the same vendor might be one thing, but it'd be nice if there was a conversation to negotiate a group purchasing contract, so they're.
Almost all these vendors are on Sourcewell, so you're getting a national contract price anyway.
You're getting that.
Capital, We'll talk a minute about fleet again, and I would say that, because of your strong support and leadership, the work with the finance team, work with Erica, we're really in a much better spot now than we were, years ago with our fleet management, our fleet planning. We keep fire engines on the front line, so responding every day for 8 years. I say we keep, this is our plan moving forward now that we have a solid capital improvement plan again, capital investment plan. And then we take the next 8 years and put them in reserve. So when the frontline piece needs repairs or service, we put that reserve piece in service. So we're putting ourselves back on a 16-year life cycle for the fire engines. The ladder truck only gets about a 12-year life cycle. There's not a reserve part to that we use that for 12. We're going to use that for 12 years and then send it off to live somewhere else. And then the ambulances, we take about a 9-year lifespan total. So 3 years as a frontline piece and then 6 years as a reserve piece. So essentially every 3 years we need to buy an ambulance to maintain that. And we've built these numbers based on our call volume now and also these changes that we've made to our responses, both the medical calls and also the priority dispatching has really helped. The proximity dispatching has helped us reduce these numbers to where they are now. We ordered an engine in May of 23. We'll take delivery of that in 60 to 90 days. And then the ladder truck we ordered in July of 24. We were originally supposed to see that in about almost 4 years. Somehow miraculously we'll see that this summer. So that was kicked up quite a bit. We ordered an ambulance in May of 23. We'll see that in early FY 27 as well. And then, as I said earlier, we'll have to order another ambulance in FY 27 for an FY 30 delivery. Fire trucks seem, at least for us, to have a little bit of a decrease of lead time with the vendor we've been using. Ambulances do not, though. And then for station improvements and modernization, in this current budget year, Fire Station 1 will be sprinklered, which is critical to have the fire stations all sprinkled. Fire Station 2 already is. And then in FY 27 and beyond, you'll see capital requests for Station 1 improvements. The two primary things are living quarters on the second floor, the bunk rooms. Right now, it's a communal bunk room layout, and that doesn't really work with today's fire service demographics. When we came in the fire service, that was how it worked, and that was the expectation. Now the expectation, is more privacy, private bunk rooms, more available bathrooms. So that's something we're working on. Coupled with that, now at Station 1 during the day, we typically have 13 people in that building. That building for both restrooms and kitchen and eating space was not designed for that. Right now, you see people eating like lunch in shifts. So moving forward, there is also a plan to modernize the restrooms and kitchen facilities, add to the restrooms, and have a larger area for everyone to be eating.
Is there any, when you talk about the future capital improvement, are we saving anything, or is the plan to come to the council and say, we need this chunk of change?
No, so if we look at apparatus for a minute, we have had capital reserves that in this summer when we received both the engine, or this winter we received the engine, and in summer when we received the ambulance, those monies are already fully allotted in reserve. There will be a discussion with the finance team, and I'm sure you, as to how we handle the ladder purchase when it arrives, because it's arriving early. But that was always a plan to finance that in some way. The station addition and station expansion is staggered out. So we have money in FY 27, money in FY 28, money.
Sprinklers came in.
The sprinkler, and the sprinkler came in less than we planned for this fiscal year. So that will allow reserves. So we're actually able to lower our FY 27, FY 28 capital requests for the station because we're planning on some reserves, and then that will set us forward for that.
I think a good way to say this, everything is built into the plan without a significant, because we projected over several years, saving for the last 3 without a significant increase spike in any one given year.
Thank you.
You saw the emerging issues, you saw on Jesse's slide, plan leadership transition. We have spent the last 3 years really working on succession planning. And I have told my staff that I will be retiring sometime late 2026. So sometime in this time next year, I am going to transition out of to a different something else. I think 30, it's 39 years I've been doing this. It is time for something else. And so, anyways, I think ultimately we have been really successful, I think, doing succession planning. And I don't think ever in my life I felt more confident in a group of people to continue to move an organization forward than what we have within the organization. And obviously the gentleman to my left, we have changed culture in a manner that is incredible for today's fire services, incredibly rewarding, the culture that we have within our organization. And, we're 15% female, well above the national average. But more than that, we just have a group of we have a group of people of all ages who want to deliver the highest service, committed to this community. And I've been incredibly blessed in my career. So, and then the rest is on Chris.
Yeah, another transition.
You leaving now?
The last thing on emerging issues is a dedicated shift commander, ironically, or not ironically, because of everyone's hard work in this room, really. The fire department is in a really good spot, in a really solid spot. And interestingly enough, every year for the last several years, last 4 years since Chief Locke's been here, there's been different emerging issues as number one, and the second emerging issue or third emerging issue every year has been the dedicated shift commander. It's probably the one thing we have not yet achieved. And there are really 2 elements to it. There's the high risk, low frequency events that really require the person in charge to not be committed to a crew of firefighters, not be committed to a fire truck, but arriving there on their own with the proper tools and equipment to manage the incident safely and effectively. But there's not any there. We're not going to fool you and say that's 90% of the time. That's 10% of the time. But the 90% of the time work are a lot of the administrative things and functions that don't get handled right now, or get handled in by many different people. The fire service is great at, you give us something to do, we'll figure out how to get it done. May not be done the most efficient way, but it's done and we provide the service. And right now we have 10 people managing ordering supplies, EMS training, fire training, EMS quality assurance with both care and reporting, 3 different shifts, training in 3 different manners. So the list can go on and on. So really there's a high level of administrative function, administrative management, if you will, that we miss right now, not having the shift commander be able to, for all intents and purposes, 90% of the time, be back at the fire station, taking care of administrative tasks. The demands, we've done a really good job this year of participating when we can with Parks and Rec and different other departments with their events that they have. But that puts a really heavy burden on the shift commanders now when they're also riding the fire truck, going on calls constantly. And the more we can take that person who's in charge of the shift and take them away from the less critical incidents that can be managed by lieutenants and senior firefighters, the more we can get community risk and community outreach and administrative functions taken care of to really take us to that next level as an organization. And probably with this leadership transition, and it gives us an opportunity to determine how we transition to this in the future and how we go from potentially a fire chief and a deputy fire chief to a fire chief and some sort of other organizational structure.
So I have a question, two questions. First of all, how is the pipeline for new firefighters? Is there any interest being expressed by people asking if you're hiring?
So we receive some interest. I would say in the last 12 months, we've received a lot more than we did in the 24 months before. We're definitely not having people pound down the doors. But I would say that we are definitely on a little bit of an upswing with that. And I'm not sure how much of that is necessarily national trend, how much of that is, as the chief said, we've really changed the culture of this organization, and we've really turned this organization back into an organization, a fire organization in the state that people want to work for. So that could also be a driving factor for interest. You know, we do see, we have a couple of people, you know, candidates out there now that we're just kind of waiting for job openings, you know, that have expressed interest to us from other areas, you know, that are looking for the quality of life that Vermont offers. So
The other question was, how many overdose occurrences have we had?
We go to, in the grand scheme of things, very few
This
overdoses.
was last year. I think.
Yeah, we go to very few overdoses.
Very few what?
Very few overdoses.
Compared to Burlington.
Yeah, in comparative. Yep.
Thank you.
So you have people who are. The question was more around interest, and so my question is more about what is the average employment years, and is there a lot of turnover? Is there in the field something like people stay 2 to 3 years or 20 years?
Well, you have to, the problem is it's very difficult to answer that question because in 2022, we had so many vacancies and such turnover that 60% of our staff have less than 3 years on the job. So we have a group that stayed through some really tough times. They were basically working 48 hours on, 24 hours off, mandatory overtime every day. Then we had a whole group of people that would have been in that 10 to 15 years that left, that go, I don't want to work here anymore. And then we've hired a bunch of people. So I would say we've lost very few people that we've hired in the last 3 years. The people we have lost that has not been a bad thing. There was a hiring drought that you perhaps took risk with people that you wouldn't have. You didn't have a wide candidate pool. We're fortunate that seems to be coming back.
That just to, what Steve is talking about, that 60% of our staff is 3 years on the job. In the last 5 years, between the deputy, the chief, and I, and others in the department, we have spent a huge amount of energy to shift around that culture and hire and new. So that's not, it wasn't that anything necessarily went wrong. It was just, we had to course correct the whole department. And in that course correcting, lost some people, had some people retire, and filled a huge amount of vacancies. When I started, there were 6 vacancies, I want to say. Something like that.
Probably, yeah.
And then another half dozen
Yeah.
left.
Is there an industry average in terms of how long people stay? I mean, it's a job, I can't imagine.
I mean, I'll say this, I used to, people, when we came on the job, you just came and stayed to retirement. That's what
Yeah.
everybody did.
Yes.
And now my general sense is if I keep somebody 5 years, I feel pretty good about that. And some of it is some people come in, they want to do it for a lifetime. And then there's some people that say, I want to try this out. And you just never know when they want to go to something else. Ultimately the lifestyle for some people works really well. Like shift work for me was great, but shift work is difficult if you're a young mom or you're, other scenarios. And so it's not for everybody, but we've had we've been really stable.
I think it's also a secondary advantage of some of the other cultural changes we've been doing at the fire department to train up paramedics and to really build out a prevention unit, is providing a different employment ladder for folks who want to stay in the service, who want to stay in that first responder caregiving of a community job type, but don't want to be going out to calls at 2 a.m. anymore. So how do we get them into a prevention unit? Or if you're an EMT and really love EMT work and and are curious about that and want to see the next stage, that bounce to paramedic level training. So we're trying to create those ladders to hopefully keep really talented, interested, young, or earlier in their career with us, people more engaged for longer.
Yeah, we had not supported anyone going to paramedic school in 10 or 12 years. And now since 2022, we've sent probably 9 people to paramedic school. And we have a list that we try to send 2 to 3 a year. You know, that's a natural progression and that keeps people. People don't want to work someplace where they're stagnant. And we had really become not supportive of what had become industry norms.
And it also provides then a higher level of care on the ambulance. So for our community members, they're getting the benefit of a paramedic, not an EMT. EMTs are great and do a huge amount of work, but there is another product to the residents. You're okay.
We're both the EMTs. You should call somebody else.
Can I ask one more question? So if you had to have a zero line of confidence or pessimism, right, about fire safety in residential, units in South Burlington, are you feeling more positive, like over the course of the last year, with the record of fires that you've had in homes? Do you feel like that's around the national average or below, or are you feeling like, we need to do more to educate people about stuff or inspect stuff, or?
I think our home fire incidence numbers are probably lower as opposed to nationwide. I think a lot of that has to do with our housing stock, right? We are a newer community. And when you look at many places throughout the country, they're not nearly as young as you would, housing stock wise, building wise, as South Burlington. So I think that plays a very large part in it. I think the majority of our newer construction, unless it's single family, which we're having less and less of, obviously, do have fire alarms and sprinkler systems in them. So that certainly helps those things. I think our demographics, though, of the community in general definitely play a positive role in keeping that number fairly low. And I think, as we've talked about before, some of the fires in single family homes that we've seen this year alone, or in the last year, may have been prevented with single family home fires permitting, right? So inspection. So in the future that helps. And there's no doubt that our rental registry team is maybe daily pushing it, because I don't want to make it sound like it's bad, but certainly weekly finding things that they're able, just educating the homeowners on, the property owners and the renters up that they didn't know. That's creating a more fire safe community.
Any other questions from council at all? Any of the public is there? Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Good story. I mean, you heard a few years ago when morale was low. Morale's not low. That's great. And I'm really pleased. And I'm sure the council is too in your progress. So thank you. Do what?
Inside thought, Jeff. Inside thought.
Great. So we will move on to item 8 now, which is the Public Works presentation with Tom DiPietro, the Public Works Director, and Erica Quallen-Toll, right? Toll, okay. The Deputy Director of Public Works for Capital Projects.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thanks for hanging in until the end here.
Let me make sure I can share.
You're very popular, so we didn't want you to take the whole morning.
Popular is good.
All right.
The slides are the most numerous pages.
Oh, I talk fast, don't worry. All right, it's Tom DiPietro, Erica Quallen. We're here to present the Public Works budget. And so I've just got a couple of kind of informational slides up front. So we are 44 people over in Public Works, up a little bit. We've added some staff in the current fiscal year on our wastewater side. We've got about 8 vacancies right now. A lot of those vacancies are on the labor side. So I'll just note, we're doing rehiring. We've got some good applicants in right now, but it does leave us a little short for plowing, snow removal. So right now we're running 2 sidewalk plows instead of 4. And that's more just from a labor standpoint. And we also have our Deputy Director of Operations, Adam Cate, out there in a plow.
making sure the streets are clear. And I would much prefer to have Adam in the office helping me manage projects, phone calls and other things. So a lot going on right now in Public Works, but still about 44 folks. Just some general kind of stats. So as I go through and talk about different things, this might give you an idea of size and scope of what we do. I'll just note one here. So we maintain about 87.5 road center line miles. If you break that out into lane miles, that's about 220 lane miles. So if you start at the Canadian border, that'll get you all the way down to the end of Vermont and back to Rutland. So every time we go out and plow roads, that's, you know, what our crew is covering. Just try to put it in scale for you a little bit.
So you do shared use paths and acres of parks and open space and on-road bike. Do you do, and I don't know what they're called, there is a path,
Trails.
with the little path signs, it like goes behind, goes in two directions from from Heinsberg Road, one that goes by whatever the water facility, whatever that is on Heinsberg Road, goes to the high school. And then the other side starts at Winding Brook and goes to the end of maybe Williston Road or to behind Winding Brook and Sugar Tree and Treetops. Who takes care of that?
So if the trails are kind of official city trails, our horticultural specialist maintains those. That was moved into his job description. We do not do snow removal on trails. So this is more like pruning, kind of punch-ins, things like that. If they're falling apart, he would be the individual taking care of them.
So if there's signs, does that mean it's a city thing? Or
Not necessarily, we
Oh.
discovered, and if Paul were here on some of our group runs, we've discovered some signage, we don't know how it got there, you know, because it's city. But yeah,
So you prune, but you don't make it a path.
through general maintenance, it's, you know, when there's issues, obviously we'll go attend to them, but yeah, we're not plowing or clearing snow off
Oh,
the
well, that
trails,
means you
certainly.
wouldn't plow because.
Yeah, we'd never plow them. Yeah. This is this is a partial list of all the projects. If folks wanted a full list, I would say, you know, refer to the capital improvement plan. Public Works is, I think, more than half of that plan, but this is just the stuff that's sort of top of mind when I made the presentation a couple weeks ago that we've been working on, to give you an idea. All right, getting into kind of the budget itself. So first wanted to highlight some of the successes from FY25. So the big one is completed Dorset Street paving. As you all know, this is a multi-year effort over, I think, 7 years, kind of on Dorset Street, off, back on, off. We finally finished. So the whole area has been repaved from Williston down to Kennedy. So that's exciting. Something else that's exciting is we purchased new salt monitoring equipment for our plow trucks. Our current software and equipment became obsolete. We used it to the very bitter end when they told us something finally broke. They just couldn't service it anymore. So we got a nice new system that the guys have been using starting this year. So that's been great. It took a little while to get it delivered and installed. Just the first winter.
What does it do?
It basically tracks salt usage by truck.
So pounds per mile or?
Yep. And so, you know, if we tell the guys we want them to put down 250 pounds per mile, it reports back if we're doing that, what they actually put down,
Okay.
where. So the old software couldn't do where as well. So once we get it set up, I can say how much salt did we spread in the Potash Brook water trip, or, you know, whatever geofence you want to put
So
on
there's two
there.
things, they dial in what they want and it also tells them what they did.
Yep. And it's really helpful because we post that after a storm in the hallway. So I always catch the guys there looking at it, saying,
Yeah.
oh, Madam told you 250, you use 300, you know, so it's sort of, if you put the gas usage in front of you in the car, right?
Yeah.
People will be more conscious of how much gas they're using, kind of the same idea. And so I love having that.
Is there software that tells you how much you should put down based upon coming of the forecast and current conditions? Or
There's charts that we use.
charts? Okay.
And just general understanding of our kind of roads and equipment, kind of that knowledge that we've built over the years. But yeah, that's a whole separate interesting topic. But we've really delved into that over the years to try to drive our salt use numbers down. Where was I? Dorset Street signals, so we've got all.
Mary Street, Mary Street.
Oh, I skipped Mary Street, I'm sorry, yep. So, section of sidewalk now, behind me to connect, Williston Road to our city center down Mary Street with a nice sidewalk. That got completed. Adaptive signals are in on Dorset Street, working well. The signals are running more efficient. There will always be traffic on Dorset Street and at the intersection of Williston and Dorset. But I promise you it's running as efficiently as we can make it. With the new sort of AI that we've got in there too, we can check in on that. It adjusts itself when it sees a lot of cars for whatever reason. Let's say there's an event at UVM and everybody's headed down Williston Road. It sees that on a 5-minute basis and it can adjust in real time. So it's been very exciting.
As a rush hour commuter on Dorset Kennedy, right, in two directions, I am seeing fewer stacking, to get on 89 and to turn right onto Dorset to go north. It's really a night and day change. So I appreciate that. Also, Dorset Market, right, is very responsive to people arriving there. So
Yeah, and we've made little changes with the arrows, there
Yeah.
over at Kennedy, sorry.
Yeah.
And we're looking at it now coming out by Garden. So we can make little adjustments too, actually a fair amount of work to make those adjustments, but
Yeah.
we can make additional adjustments, I'll say, as we go forward. Yep. And then I just noted some facilities improvements here because there's been a lot happening with our facilities, some sort of deferred maintenance stuff, energy efficient windows, boilers at the police station, new garage doors at fire station 1. Shifting over to our utilities, that is specifically stormwater, wastewater, and drinking water. A couple of successes. So first was a big stormwater project. While you may have seen us working or our contractor working on Route 7, this is an expansion of the Bartlett Bay stormwater treatment system behind one of the car dealerships back there, bringing a lot of water from Route 7 and the other side of Route 7 to treatment in the Bartlett Brook watershed. It's finished now, but we did it, started construction in FY25. We completed a significant repair at the Heinsberg Road pump station on Heinsberg Road. So folks may remember we had that closed for a little while. So where that force main emptied out into the gravity system, we had a failure a few years ago, made a temporary repair and had to go back. So we were very happy that went well. That was when we ended up rebidding, got a much better price. So that was great. And in 25, we completed final engineering for the Bartlett Bay wastewater treatment facility reconstruction. As of right now, that is out to bid and we're opening bids in January. So that'll be really exciting to see where that goes. A couple other things, we upgraded some of our larger, older drinking water meters. They've kind of aged out, new meters more accurate, right? And we bid out the Brewer Parkway water line work. And again, switching fiscal years here, that work has started. It's going to finish up in the spring. They've done a winter shutdown. One last bullet here to note is we also reduced our water loss by over 5%. So our water loss had creeped up significantly over the last couple of years to over 20, it was about 22%, I think. Typical for water systems is 10 to 22%. And so that 5% reduction is about $100,000 of water that we're saving. We're not just losing and things like that.
How did you detect that?
Breaks help. There's detection. The water department does a lot of detection, but we find a lot of them when there's breaks and leaks and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell us the status of the new tank?
New tank? Yeah, sure. I didn't put that one up here, but so the new tank in Dorset is done. The metal frame is built. The roof is on. They are entering winter shutdown. Maybe today. I didn't come back to check. They had like a hole in the side where they had the crane equipment moving in and out. They're welding that up. And they'll be back in the spring to finish up site work, do some painting, other equipment odds and ends. So that'll be done by kind of midsummer.
Do they have to coat the inside of the tank at all?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so when they start filling it with water and then it starts draining out, we're gonna get a mixture of old tank and new tank for all the users, right? Because it's combined.
They have a procedure with testing that goes into all that. So they do the coating, they fill it.
Yeah.
Test it, drain it.
Yeah.
And I can pass that along.
Okay.
It's pretty detailed. I don't have it memorized, but I know our water folks have been very involved in that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So I just wanted to highlight a few things in the budget line items for the proposed FY27 budget, moving to that. In large part, we have kept things pretty consistent from FY26. So there wasn't too much to highlight here. So kind of the things that jumped out at me after going through it and looking at it again for the presentation, the tree care line item, proposed to increase that by about $16,000. That is, so as you know, we have one city arborist. We've got about 7,500-ish street trees mapped. We don't map all the trees in the parks. That's a lot for one person. Folks hopefully have noticed the nice pruning that Nick, our arborist, has done along Market Street. Really would love for Nick to do more of that for a lot of reasons. The idea here is that we can maybe put out a contract to help Nick do some pruning, see what those contracts are like. In his past positions, he's had a lot of help when he worked in Syracuse, for example. They had contractors that did that. The idea is to get an initial contract out, see how that goes, and see if we can really start to catch up on some pruning, and improve the condition of our tree inventory. So that's.
Is the intent to keep street trees, once they grow to a certain point, to keep them at that same height and canopy and not let them just like go up forever?
I think it's shape, it's like structural deficiencies too.
Oh.
So if you, and we should get Nick in here, but if you don't prune a tree at the right time, it's gonna grow a certain way and make it more prone to breakage, limbs falling off and things like that. So if you get it in a certain window and you prune it, then the tree will last longer and look better. So, you know, we've missed that window in some cases, I'll say. Certainly on roads, we haven't accepted that in South Village as an example, unfortunately, where those trees have passed that age. When we accept those roads, we're gonna have a lot of tree work to do in there. We may have missed that critical window. But we will address it and, you know, we'll do the best we can. Those trees do look good. So
does that count pruning of trees like around the shared use paths or the sidewalks?
just along roads, when I give you that 7,500 number.
Okay, I mean. Sometimes I bike and the trees are awfully close to my head. On the sidewalk as opposed to.
I mean, Tim hasn't been along there yet.
So
on the road.
if our plows don't prune those, we'd love to get Nick out there with some help to take care of those.
And let him know he does that.
I'll talk early.
And then another change, if you look at the facilities budget, it looks like things changed wildly. We really just consolidated there. When you see the pluses and negatives in that line item. You'll notice that administrative services went up in wastewater fairly significantly. That's just a reflection of adding 2 new staff to that department. That changes the formula, how finance sort of allocates citywide services, HR, IT, et cetera. So that's the big change there. Also noting on the drinking water side, we are now directly managing the drinking water funds. So as everybody I think knows, the Champlain Water District serves as the South Burlington Water Department. They also used to hold city funds in accounts that they could access and we could access. They would do a lot of the management of those funds. We have moved those over, so now those funds are managed by the city, Rich and Martha, which was a little less work for CWD, and a little more work for us. So it kind of shifted things around a little bit there.
Does that include receipts for billing for water?
They do all the billing still.
They do the billing, so they collect that money.
They collect it, they put it in the account and then we manage that account.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is other than that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, good clarification. We do not do our own billing.
Tom, the wastewater staffing, were those open positions that got filled?
These are new positions. So it was a second person to help at our Bartlett Bay facility and then a collection system manager. Who have hired that position, and it's been really exciting for me to watch them sort of take on some of those efforts. It's been great in the last couple of weeks. And I just want to note here, this is sort of the big caveat when you look at the drinking water budget. We've had to assume a 5% increase in the cost to purchase water from the Champlain Water District. They have a meeting, I think next week, to talk about it for the first time. Their budget cycle is a little different. They could decide more or less, but we've had to make a pretty good assumption there, 5%. In the budget we provided to you.
So that could go up.
Could go up, could be 4.5, could be, you know, stay tuned. If it's vastly different, I'm sure you'll hear from me again. But 5%, we feel pretty good. I've spoke to folks over there. I don't think we'll be too far. Okay, CIP. So a lot in the public works side of the CIP. So just a couple of highlights here. The CIP provided to you proposes to maintain $1.25 million for paving fiscal year 27. There's a new item in there to start engineering for Old Farm Road. So a lot of engineering around Old Farm Road, the O'Brien development on either side now. They are responsible for reconstructing a little piece of that down by Kimball. The rest of that road remains the city's. It's going to see a lot more traffic. It's in pretty rough shape from all the construction over the years, for sure. We got to looking at it and thought maybe there's structural issues. We probably can't come out here and just put a new layer of pavement down and declare victory on this road. It may need some structural updates for like that, those base layers. So this has been added for us to get out there, kind of similar to what we did on Dorset Street to get engineering help to evaluate that. And so we can have a better plan to make sure that road can support traffic for many years to come.
Would
So that's,
there be a sidewalk then on the road or no?
there is some sidewalk is proposed to come towards the Heinsberg roadside that the developer is responsible for building.
Question for you, Tom, on that road and the increased traffic from the development,
Mhm.
et cetera. I don't know if this is for you or for Paul, but, did we have impact fees that anticipated that and cover that, or is that something that is now being taken up by the city after this development's been happening?
That would be a good question for Paul. I'm not meeting.
You can answer that. So a project can only get on the impact fee list if it is increasing our capacity to maintain it, but if a two-lane road is replaced with a two-lane road, just a better one, you're not increasing the amount of people that can use it, so it can't become an impact fee project.
So the roads, I mean, right now they're in that development, there's like a big road. You know, that starts at, Heinsberg Road that goes all the way to, that turns, that goes past the two apartment buildings and then goes down to Kennedy Drive. It's a narrow road. Is that a city road or is that a condo road?
That's a city street. It's an
No,
older city.
we haven't accepted it yet, have we accepted that one?
Old Farm Road, or my thing?
Well, no, I think you're
Oh, I'm
asking
sorry.
about from
Kennedy Drive.
Kennedy, if you turn off Kennedy Drive into O'Brien up towards the Summit Buildings.
Yeah, up and then you
Oh.
turn right and you go
We have
down.
not yet accepted roads in that area, but we are very close to recommending to council that you accept some of those roads. Yeah. But we do not yet own those. But we
And
do.
is that the same designs? I think maybe one of your questions is that the same design standard that like Market Street is that with? You know that?
Don't know offhand, different road topologies. So when that was proposed, it was a certain type of road, had to meet these dimensional standards, you know, planned kind of for a certain amount of traffic for that neighborhood. I don't speak kind of generally here, but back to what's in the CIP, I guess, this is an older road, right? That was an old farm, it's literally an old farm road, right?
Old farm, sorry.
Yeah, and it probably wasn't constructed to how if we were building that road today, it would be a lot more robust, wider, a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tom, I know I've provided this feedback about a community member that had a bike accident commuting from Kennedy out to the on Logic area, and the shared use path in front of the businesses on the going south are great. And then there's the culvert, which the city has responsibility for apparently. And then there's a shift over to a regular sidewalk on the opposite side of the road. And then O'Brien is gonna be responsible for the bike path kind of from the north part of the culvert, or I'm just wrong direction, west part to Kennedy. But that is, since that happened or was reported, I've been out there many times, and that is a
It's
tough cycling area.
Absolutely, yeah, that's kind of a
And-
gap
and
in our
the- and
network
the
right now, is that
improvements are way
connection.
off. Like, I think 2030 would be, I think that's what America might have told me.
Yeah, I'm not, without pulling up
Yeah,
the
you know,
exact
just pull it
year.
out. But
Yeah, O'Brien has a certain threshold of development when they're on the hook to have that completed.
yeah,
Okay, jumping back in here, so the facility CIP, we tried to bid out some improvements at the Public Works Garage, came back much higher. So the budget proposes to add additional money so we can bid that work out, extra wash bay, kind of some site changes, we've talked about that before. Stormwater CIP, really funds, a lot of ongoing work, and some culvert work, down on Bartlett Bay Road. I'm sure constituents have talked to you about that over the years. So that is moving into the engineering phase. And then some projects in Butler Farms. There's 2 culverts in Butler Farms a couple of years ago, maybe a decade ago now, in this track of time. We replaced Oak Creek Village culverts. This is the other 2 upstream of that. We're going back and getting those. The state of Vermont is proposing to pave Williston Road, not this coming summer, but the following summer. We have a lot of infrastructure under that road. So there's a good chunk of money proposed in the drinking water budget to replace valves. We want to do that now ahead of the paving, so we don't have to cut into new pavement. So you'll see that in the CIP. And a new item in the wastewater CIP. So the UV, the ultraviolet light controls for disinfection at the airport parkway facility are also obsolete. They cannot be serviced. We have prioritized that because we need those to disinfect as a kind of a last step in our treatment process. So we need those controls to be replaced. So those got added from last year into the budget.
Is that Wilson Levy paving, is that just a shim, or is they gonna dig it up and put a new base down?
I think they're gonna mill down a bit. They are still developing plans, kind of as we speak. We did a little walk around. They're also gonna look at some of the signals too.
Okay.
And so there's a lot that goes into that more than just pavement,
Okay.
striping.
Because when they did the further south, right, swing around Pete's RV, right, and that all the way up to Williston, they took it down to the ground and they put new gravel and, the whole base was redone.
Yeah.
I don't think the base, I remember them saying about if something is a defect lower than a few inches, I think it's gonna be a 2 or 3 inch mill, put it back up.
Because that would be really hard.
I don't think I'm pretty sure they're not getting down to any sort of base.
Okay.
But it will be hard on.
It will still, is it
Yes.
done at night? You don't know.
Nothing has been, I mean, they're still developing plans,
Yeah.
getting the right of way lines defined. So it's 2 summers away, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah. Just a couple of emerging issues, things to put on your radar, make you aware of. Long lead times on the purchase of new equipment, streetlights, months. So somebody slides into a streetlight, takes it out, we gotta replace it. It takes us months to get matching streetlights. At this point, we're looking into just getting whatever we can quick for like temporary lights. It's sort of our plan, then we'll go back and put the matching one up later. Just electronics, vehicles, equipment, there's a lot of long lead times on things, which sort of puts us in planned purchases across fiscal years. Just want folks to be aware of that if they aren't already. Lead service lines, so this is drinking water. Again, lead service lines, federal requirement to go identify where lead lines might exist. We did not find any lead service lines, and this has been more of a paper exercise. We have records, which is great, but there's 2,462 pipes where we just have no clear record. So what do we do with those? And we are working with state of Vermont on these federal requirements to figure out, are they gonna make us dig those lines up and look at them? Or some percentage of them? So we're really trying to understand the cost associated with compliance there. So I just wanted to flag that, but we have a pretty good chunk of years to do that. So it's not like it's all gonna happen in FY 28 or something.
So how large a percentage or smaller percentage is the 2,400?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll have to follow up with you on that. We did a pretty good job kind of chasing it down, showing on paper that this was specified as copper or whatever, right? But I couldn't tell you the percentage. I'm sure our water superintendent could.
I mean, like, is it 50%?
Less than that by far. Making the service lines, so not our mains, right? This is the service line inventory, the line that runs from the main to individual homes. Got some big construction projects coming up at the wastewater plant. So we talked about Bartlett Bay a little bit already. We're also putting a new clarifier at the airport parkway plant. That is going to chew up a lot of staff time this summer. When both are going on, and then kind of for the next couple of years, it's 2-year construction cycle down at Bartlett Bay. Stormwater side, a lot of state permits. You may have heard these 3-acre permits. There's some deadlines coming up. The city is part of a lot of these. A lot of private property hasn't really engaged in those permit expiration discussions. They are going too soon. So we are trying to build up some funds in stormwater so that we can pay our share as our current policy states. I don't want to get too far down the tangent of stormwater ordinance and policy, but we kick in a percentage in some cases when we own impervious surface. That is part of that permit. So we want to make sure we have the funds there so we can pay for those upgrades and kind of meet stormwater requirements, improve our local waterways too. Just a lot of deferred maintenance on the facility side as we look at our line items. We're working through that pretty quickly already. And just another issue, our arborist has identified. Of those 7,500-ish trees, we've got about 880 vacant trees right now. That's trees that, for whatever reason, got removed, haven't been replanted. That's more than I thought. So we have proposed a line item in the CIP to start kind of filling those in addition to what you saw for ash trees, which is just an ongoing program. So you'll see 10 grand.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what vacant tree planting.
So there was a tree and let's say a car hit it and we had to
Okay.
take it down and that's like a vacant spot. Some of that is some interplanting we could do as well, where we'd like to put more trees. So that's more than I thought there was out there as we sort of got into the data and cleaned it up. So that's something new we learned. So we're trying to address that within the CIP.
Now, can we go back to the deferred maintenance? I'm gonna assume that that was in years past, potentially a budget issue.
It's building maintenance in general.
And so how are we looking to the future to not defer and put off for a future date needed maintenance? And where is that in this year's budget?
So some of that has been incremental increases in facilities, and since facilities was known as physical plant for a few years, it was located just at City Hall. It's still a relatively new division. It's been around for 4 years, I think it is.
It wasn't until we opened this building that we had
Yeah.
dedicated facility staff. So it was pretty new, this expertise was pretty new.
Yeah, and in the past year, it's moved over into Public Works, so wrapping in and being able to be a more connected and resourced division. And so a lot of things that prior to this building and the existence of physical plant we're finding. So some of it is just playing catch up, and then we'll be back on our regular cycle. Things where preventative maintenance was maybe missed, looking at our contracts with our vendors that are coming in to take a look at our HVAC. And chipping away, some have turned into capital projects like the boilers at PD. And then other things have been just a big workload that we're getting back onto a preventative schedule.
Some of you have heard me talk before about, I think South Burlington in the last 5 to 8 years has done this big shift from being a Vermont big town government to a real city government. And I think this is part of that shift. So historically, it was the expectation that department heads were taking care of their buildings. So your police chief was taking care of your police station, the fire chief was taking care of your fire station. And most of the time that works great. They're smart people who can figure things out and hire contractors and whatnot. But as we have more and more facilities and really are trying to get ahead of this preventive maintenance, having that professional expertise that can look at group buying, can look at what can we do in-house versus what's more effective to do under contract. I think that's part of this transition into letting experts do the work and not requiring experts in one thing to also be experts in another thing. Same with HR, same with IT, same with facilities.
So as this is an emerging issue, is there in this budget perhaps a bump or whatever in?
This year, we're keeping facilities pretty level funded. Last year was a big shift in facilities. So the bigger changes happened last year. Some of the changes happened in the CIP, but keeping that budget pretty level funded, a few things shifting a little bit, but also some of that reorganization that Tom talked about consolidating our budget lines so we can use them a bit more effectively.
Thank you.
I think you had seen this when the manager did the budget overview. So here's proposed rate increases. I did add a little did you know on the side there because I feel like this sort of misrepresents some of the increases. So in 2023, we did a rate study and that's where we got this figure. So 41% of our billing accounts on the drinking water, wastewater side pay the minimum fee. So what this represents is some, larger amount of water usage in the chart. But if you actually look at what it is for, those 41% of the accounts, it's really only a $40.40 increase as opposed to the $75 increase that those numbers would add up to. So it's certainly smaller for the majority of folks, or slightly less than the
Tom, what's the
majority.
criteria for the minimum fee?
1,000 cubic feet.
Say it again.
How do we do that?
Where'd that come from? What is it again?
1,000 cubic feet.
Okay.
1,000.
Cubic.
1,000. Not gallons.
Cubic
Cubic feet. How many gallons in a cubic foot?
Well, so next slide, Hold on. You all had a lot of questions.
Go to it. So I think the key point here is that 41% of our of our residents who receive water bills pay that minimum. So when in the historic, this was a really good catch by Tom. Historically, when we've talked about what that average impact would be for property owners, we're using it based on the 8,000 cubic feet data point that we've always used for comparison purposes. But the reality is almost half of those will actually see half that rate increase. So we need to change how we talk
This is
about it.
very helpful because this rate was gonna be higher than the potential tax
Yeah,
rate.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
How much cubic feet or whatever does it? Do
Do you use?
the 50% plus people have to be using? I mean,
more than
So
that,
if you use over 1,000,
yeah, but I don't know what that, I don't know what that translates.
like a
to. Does that mean you have a
two-bedroom
pool?
home?
Does that mean you have 17 people in your house? Does that mean you have a hot tub that I mean, what does that translate to?
So usage is highly variable based on the individuals, so
They are, no.
the next slide, explains two things, I hope.
Oh, okay.
And you had a question about meters, so I'm gonna try to explain metering with this. I think this will also explain why I chose a technical career and not more artistic endeavors. This is to the best of my ability to draw this. Oh,
hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Before you move on to that, I have a question about the 41%.
Mhm.
That indicates that 41% of our residents have no incentive to pay attention to their water usage. Do we have any intention or thought of changing what that minimum is so that we're actually
Well, if they're using less than 1,000, right,
Yes,
for one
Jesse.
household, that's pretty good. Already.
so no, I'm laughing because this is what the conversation we had about the rate study.
we always get into this one, yeah.
This is a great question and a very important question. Go ahead, Todd.
I'll try to keep it.
No, go for it.
So we did the rate study in 23 to try to address that issue and some other issues, better understand our rate structure and recommend changes. And so it gave us some great data. The issue we ran into is having maybe a base rate and then different usage amounts, whatever they might be. We could do that on the water side. But then it would be different for wastewater. And the reason for that is because we serve Colchester. And so if we had a base rate, be hundreds, maybe thousands of folks in Colchester, it's just one base rate fee, the way our agreement is written with Colchester. So we would have to go and revise that or, make a new agreement with them before we could change the structure. Felt it would be very confusing to have one way of billing drinking water and another for billing wastewater.
Yeah.
So we didn't move that forward, and it brought up a lot of interesting questions we've been back and forth with every year, the rate study, I mean, I think it's fascinating.
So it's an issue you're aware of and trying to figure out if you.
Yeah, and so we did not move any changes forward, unfortunately, at that time, because for those reasons and others, yeah.
The one issue I recall, right, we're talking about this, there's like a per meter charge, right? So a 500 unit apartment building pays the same per meter charge as, okay, there you go, as a single family home, which seemed a bit inequitable.
Yeah.
But going back to Lori's question, I think one of the things that sometimes you may hear about from your constituents is I've been paying this base rate for years and all of a sudden I got an increase in my bill. And that's probably because they went over that
They
1,000.
started using more water.
So maybe they had a grandchild or some parent move in or a toilet's running or something like
Yeah.
that. That is unto itself a control, but you're right, within that, if you're a single person who is not doing a lot of laundry,
Right.
you might have a ways to go to hit that 1,000 and you may not have the same motivation to conserve.
Okay, so just wanted to explain the water meters, which drives a lot of billing, which kind of explains, I don't know how many individuals are in each house. We can use averages and things like that. I just don't have that data to say if there's 17 versus 3 in this house or that one. But the way the meters are set up and are required to be set up by our ordinance is every unit needs to be individually metered now. So on the left here, whether it's single family homes, like I tried to represent at the top, or some condo units that are kind of connected in one building, they should all or are required to all have their own individual meter. Anything else, any other setup is what I'll refer to as a legacy water meter setup. So if there's one meter that maybe goes to a condo and there's one meter that serves 3 units in a condo building or something. We wouldn't allow that nowadays, it'd be individual meter, but that does exist out there in the system. Also exists in the system is 1 meter for maybe multiple buildings, right, in some of these condo complexes. So it makes it really hard to generate some data. I would love it if it was all individually metered. There's a lot of reasons to have it individually metered, which you can talk about if you want, but just this really impacts billing and how we bill people right now.
When did that come to place, Tom? Like, so like all the stuff we're building at city center, is that all individually metered or is it 1 meter for each building?
For these bills, for the commercial buildings.
Yeah, all these buildings.
Yeah.
Is
That's a lot, yeah.
Is it per unit?
No, it's not per unit.
it's not per unit, it's still per building.
Yeah, well, I was talking about residential, I guess, I guess going back to the original.
But those are
Or the
residential.
commercial
Apartments.
I understand. So apartments are just getting one bill.
Yes.
So I don't want to go into this in depth, but if we took the Queen City Park approach, right? And every unit in a multi-unit building like here, right, they don't have a meter. If we applied the number of sinks or whatever it was that you use Queen City Park where they don't have a meter, right? The question is, what would be the total billing for that method versus what we're doing today with one bill for the HOA? I'm just curious. We've talked about this before, but just haven't had a chance to do that.
So it's a fair amount of work to answer a lot of these detailed questions. It's the same answer I give Tim every year. And we can make that a priority.
Yeah.
To do that work if we take some other priorities off the table right now. And so it is a fair amount of work to figure this out, really dive into this.
Bottom line is, are they getting cheap water?
What's that?
Are they getting cheap water?
I think everybody in the city gets relatively
but I mean-
expensive water based on the rates for our community versus all surrounding
But when you
communities.
compare the water that people are using,
Are they paying their fair share?
individual, are they paying their fair share?
That's a question. Yeah, we don't.
Is there any value? Or does it, and I don't know if things break in terms of water meters, but I imagine there's lots of multifamily housing units that predate the new regs, and so they're not individual. Is there any value to moving them towards individual if there's a break in the water meter? I don't know if water meters break.
Yeah, so if somebody did like a significant change to their building, we would at that point say, okay, you're making all these changes, we would like you to put individual meters in, and I'm gonna read you what I have from our. About that, I prepared a statement for that question. The reason for the individual meter requirement is to ensure fair billing, promote water conservation, enable cost recovery for property owners, and for legal compliance. Sub-metering ensures tenants pay only for their usage, encourages them to conserve water, and can lower overall consumption. It also allows for more effective leak detection, I think Jesse mentioned. In addition, it helps landlords recover costs, because it's just individually metered token, that sort of.
So it really would be if there was a major change in the building.
We might come in at that point and say, hey,
Okay.
and especially at some of where it's on the right, where it's 1 meter for maybe 6 buildings. We might say, okay.
So just to be clear, our rules now, if it's 4 stories or less, new buildings have to have individual metering, but 4 stories or more is commercial and 1.
I think it's
meter for-
apartments versus condos.
Apartments versus condos. Oh, is that the?
And I can follow up in the details of this, because I know we're already over time, but I'd be happy to follow up with what the specifics of water meter requirements are. I would have
That'd be
our
great.
water superintendent help with that, to get into the weeds a little bit. Another thing, we were asked about at the general meeting was pavement and sidewalk condition assessments, so I'm gonna get into that a little bit. So I'm gonna start with sidewalk and shared use path, SUP overview. So as you know, in 2024, we hired this company called Street Logics. I think they go by City Logics now, don't they? They changed it on us. And so they were out there on the scooters using AI, kind of categorizing and marking every little crack or heave in the sidewalk. And so they gave us a great data set. So the average citywide condition for the sidewalk and SUP combined is 75 out of 100. If you break out and just look at the shared use path, it's an 82. And the sidewalk is 71. So I've heard the board and others talk about the condition of our sidewalks and shared use path being sort of a negative way. So they're actually in very good condition relative to many municipalities. Now, I'm not denying there are sections of sidewalk and path out there that need some work done, right? You can see them on the map, purple. especially here, right? And so there are places out there where the sidewalk is old and needs to be replaced, et cetera. But overall, the condition of our network is very good. And so
It is kind of interesting, though. I wonder how they assess that. Like, I know when I ride my bike up Dorset, it feels a lot worse than what this is reflecting. So it's just, I don't know, it's a little bit of dissonance for me in this.
And when I look at Fernald Park and the condition of the bike path there, it's not yellow, it is purple.
So it's segments. So let's talk about. Street Logic did this, right? They collected a lot of data. It's still like a segment of road. So if there's like a little bad patch, that certainly factors in, but you know, we have individual data for individual cracks. So I'll show you that in a second. Roads have been done a little differently. We didn't use the AI in the scooters. So kind of hold that thought for a minute. But what do these numbers actually mean? This is just visually the different, you know, this one on the top left, this is a 29. You see a larger crack on the one on the upper right, 55, a 77, which is sort of close to our average, maybe a little better. You know, you see a small crack there if you zoom in, and then kind of a newer sidewalk is a 90. So it's just more of a visual representation. And these didn't show up really good, and I'm sure you can't see them. But so this is just out at Butler Farms on Mill Pond Road, in front of two houses. There's little red triangles here everywhere. I think you can see my mouse. Those are individual cracks in the sidewalk or upheavals that the system is mapped. And so we get, like, I clicked on one of them. There's this level of data. This was a minor crack. You can kind of see it right there. So there's 12,280 different deficiencies that were mapped to different severity levels across. So a lot of information here that we're going to plug into some of this priority setting that you've heard us talk about quite a bit. Of those, I will tell you about 1,100 are ranked as severe, about 2,800 are moderate, and the rest are all kind of minor. So like this little crack here. So the majority of them are considered minor. But again, generally good condition, certainly some work to be done to improve our sidewalks and shared use path.
As a cycler, I would not give this a 77. So I'm just, I mean,
There's some distance there.
there's a yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I ride from the Shelburne roadside to city center and other areas. So I have a question about the validity of that, for that number.
So let me try and reframe this for you, and I would like Tom to go through this whole presentation so you can see what we're trying to do here. The data is the data by professional experts, so you can question whether it's the standard we want to meet as a city. You can tell us we want, you know, if the standard, I'm making this up, I don't know what this number is, but if the standard Vermont wide is 69%, I'm using that because that's what it was when I left Montpelier, in Montpelier. And we want to be in 90, we can do that. Why Tom's saying is that they're in pretty good shape is we are, you know, at 75, we are above what we think is the average in municipalities. You can, your role here is to say, we want to be, let's not question is it really a 77? Let's say we want to hit a higher standard and we want to hit a 90. And what Tom's trying to show you is if we wanted to hit that 90, what investment we would need to make to maintain at that 90.
I understand. When I look at the assessment overview pictures and the picture of a 77, there may be parts of our bike network that look like that, but there are a lot that look like 29. So that's where I'm saying, I understand professionals came up with these numbers. You're agreeing with me right here.
I'm completely agreeing, and again, the distance for me, like, I'm just focusing on one section that I know really well, because like, over the summer, I rode it, you know, frequently, like the Dorset, you know, path, the sidewalk on one side and the path on the other, coming from Kennedy to here, is showing a lot of it is yellow, excellent. Just the dissonance to me in that, because it just doesn't feel that the majority of the path does not feel that way. Good and excellent, just doesn't. So I don't know, I'm just confused, honestly.
I don't mean to throw water on it, but I just.
Well,
So maybe you want it to be an 85, right? And I think this is your strongest policy document.
Or it may be that
There's
as
a
an
way to
average,
do that
as an
over
average,
time.
it's a 77, but
You don't.
there are
want
sections that
77.
are 23. And
Yeah.
that is very possible.
So this is a quantitative analysis, right? bikers have a qualitative analysis, right? Just of their experience, traveling along paths. And they're not thinking about the quality of the path when the path is good, but when they hit a rough patch, they go, oh, this is a bad path, right? So the good part of this data is it pinpoints those areas that need work, at a higher priority than others. So if that work gets done, you'll have a better opinion.
Absolutely.
Right.
Just a quick slide to show how we have funded this work back to FY 21, where we had $2,500 to work on curbs and sidewalk. Council has invested some time and money here, so as has Public Works. So we are in the budget you have now, we've got 152,000 proposed for FY 27, and you can see how that kind of relates comparatively.
So we just break it down, so the money, I'm thinking we have 40 for sidewalks, it's 100 for shared use path, the other 40 and 26 is.
That's the sidewalk assessment and improvement.
Sidewalk assessment, okay,
Yes.
okay.
So that was in the CIP.
Okay.
That project's getting shifted.
And then 152, we still have the 100 for shared use path, 40 for sidewalk, and there's 12 for.
There's gonna be 10 that is still in the sidewalk and path.
Assessment?
The assessment,
Okay.
yeah, and one of them I think shifted just that, maybe that 2,000, yeah.
42 or something.
So it's a $30,000 decrease from this year.
It was the assessment, right?
Yeah, the previous years were also to pay, there was a jump to pay for the consultant also to do this assessment, and that was about $40,000.
The physical work is similar.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
Okay.
all right, keep going here.
But the key, I think, is that the maintenance needs to get done, and you need to have that to show people that it's being done.
Yeah. So I've got a list of the maintenance that has been done with that funds. I can slow down and go through that with you all, or just remind you. Or
Just quickly, the 140, how much was spent, was it all spent?
In which year? FY 26 or 25?
Well, either year, I mean,
So in FY 25 was when we paid for the assessment, and that was about $50,000. There was, bike ped maintenance went towards crosswalk and bike lane striping when we, went to a higher quality paint. We paid for some, pedestrian crossing signal equipment out of that bike ped maintenance. And then there were some spot repairs here and there. And in FY 26, there were some new curb cuts and ramps built out of St. Bruce to School. But a lot of new bollards that we use for our shared use paths, you'll see them out in the spring. Again, a lot of miscellaneous repairs.
so it was all spent.
Pretty much, there's small amounts.
Carry forward.
Yeah, in FY 26, some of it is being carried forward into our ADA repairs in addition to the one-time funding that have been allocated.
So no patches of the shared use path are gonna be repaid, there's no money left?
There was a chunk that went, with the paving program when Old Cross Road was paved. There was a stretch of path that also got paved right at the beginning of it. So that, bike ped maintenance, I just forgot to put that in my line, my list, but that was also paved.
Let's talk about what the dollars we have can achieve, which is the next two slides here real quick. So some modeling, right?
Before we get to that, I just want to pause, it doesn't sound like, I understand the need for it, but like bollards and some of the other infrastructure doesn't sound like maintenance. Like I'm just, I guess in my mind, I was hoping that this money would be used to repair the.
To go back, Andrew,
Yeah.
we're gonna have this whole prioritization where we
Yeah.
look at different things, and council's gonna be able to weigh in on that very soon, I think. I don't remember the project timeline with a consultant to get that.
I should be getting the first draft of the tool in the next, month or so.
So that is our opportunity really to direct this going forward to the specific types of work, I'm gonna say. I would prefer council not get involved in the specific project identification, but the types of work that we prioritize over other types. Modeling now. So we ran a couple different scenarios here to talk about the score. So at a 50, 100, 250, $500,000, $1 million kind of funding level. I'm skipping all the words, going right to the graph. So at about a $500,000 per year, the sidewalk and shared use path we keep about the same quality. This, a lot of assumptions go into this, sort of certain deterioration curves and kind of way sidewalks degrade goes into this. But at about 500,000, so at about our 100,000 level, our score of 77 currently in about 10 years is predicted to go down to about a 56.
So this is a really sobering graph. And this is like, just to keep where we are, we need to spend all of it.
But again, that's why we're trying to present it to you this way, because you all get lots of complaints about it, we get lots of complaints about it. But we will do as much capital work as you would like us to do, but we can only do that which is funded.
Right, I mean,
And this is
really
your largest policy.
indicates that, you know, sooner rather than later, or at minimum at the next re-up of pay for pass, we need to take a chunk from it. Right? Right?
Oh, we need to get maintenance and budget.
It's a big budget item. I know that is fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to Jesse's point, yes, I always also have to make the point that all these little disparate repair projects, there's different contracts, it takes more staff time to manage.
Yeah.
So we may, if we had a $500,000 budget, I would be concerned about being able to get that work out and manage it and keep track of contractors that are sort of running around the city doing this work. But something else to consider.
Is any grant funding available for maintenance, or that's like not? Grant funding is just for the stuff.
Unless you did a major reconstruction of an existing.
Like the doors.
I'm gonna move us to roads. Is that okay?
Or do you guys want to have a conversation?
Well, I guess we go back to time schedule for conversation, right?
Okay, so shifting to roads, so very similar assessment, but done in a different way, which I want to point out. This was done by RPC, regional planning staff. They're interns, they go out, they physically look at sections of road, they come up with a score, kind of aggregate that. This was done in 2023. The weighted citywide average for road pavement condition index was a 73. Today, so we haven't gone back out and done that since then. With the deterioration curves, it's about a 70 now is what the model predicts is where our roads are at, right? We've plugged in those cases roads we have repaved, but keeping in mind, you know, it's a lot of money to repave Dorset, so we didn't spread it everywhere. We can spend our money kind of directed. Pavement condition inventories are typically done every 3 to 5 years. And I will just note, we are strongly considering moving to the City Logic system for the next time we do this. That's a decision we're kind of struggling with. So what that means is it wouldn't be kind of an apples to apples comparison. I wouldn't be comfortable saying, oh, that was a 73 and now it's a 78. It's just, you got to be consistent with your methodologies a little bit. And they're very similar, but different way of doing it. Here is your graph about paving past funding. You can see we had a nice uptick in 2026 to address our paving needs. We had kind of a trough there between 2006 and 2012 where it was a little lower, which, you know, over time that compounds, right? And again, proposing 27, it's not shown, but it would be similar to 26. Ran you some budget scenarios. So again, we're about a 70. So at a $2 million budget, about 10 years from now, we'd say our roads would have roughly the same score across the city. At 3 million, we would improve that closer to 77, 80, let's say. And then if we were to reduce our funding, we would see the road condition, as you might expect, drop over the next decade. Model
So this is also really so.
But I don't want my taxes to go up, but the roads aren't good. What's wrong with you guys?
So a little off tangent, I was just reading the other day that Washington State is banning studded snow tires. Because they did some study and showed that the studded snow tires like really chew up.
Especially in the summertime.
Really chew up the road.
Especially
Do you have a sense of that? Is like
Anecdotally, our staff feels the same way.
they do.
You know, I hear Adam talk about that all the time. And I don't know if I'm not familiar with that study per se, but.
Well, it was more than, I
It's
mean,
quite a bit.
it's now implemented, they've now passed legislation to ban studded snow tires. Part of it was because the study that showed so much damage, but also that non-studded snow tires were determined to be somewhat better now than they used to be, that there's actually not that much safety improvement between the two. And so between those two conclusions, that's what drove Washington State there. So I don't know if we can do that as a municipality, but you know, but looking at this 10-year horizon, like the Department of kick up some lobbying thing in the state. You know, because this is like, you know, this is like a black hole of money. Right, and if we can do something about that, useful.
This would be an interesting article in the other paper.
I think they do.
So that would be a statewide, discussion, it'd be really hard for us to enforce.
No,
anything like that.
but it could be a really useful discussion, looking at this graph, right? Because
The heavier the vehicle with studs is just damage. And then, I don't know if there's a study been done, because you're using a new type of asphalt now in the last 7 or 8 years, right? It's a more, I don't know, it's a different component, it's supposed to be tougher, right? The surface is a little smoother, right? And I don't know what the effect is of the studs. Well, I think it's important to understand that, you know, that the consumer or the, you know, the people that drive the roads, they know which roads they don't like. Swift Street, section of Dorset Street, right? Those are the ones that get the most traffic and the most, you know, advertisement. So it's like, not everybody wants to, I mean, I'd love to drive on every street as if it was Dorset Street now.
Right.
You know, if every street was like that, but that's not sustainable, right? But, so the question is then, what areas need the most work? And we just need to prioritize that, right?
Or do we change expectations?
Well, I think the expectation is that you should tell people, look, you know, if it's in this condition or better, it's usable, it's not a problem, but it's gonna be in our list in the future. But these other streets that have problems, they need to be done first. And that's your, you know, your philosophy anyway.
right, but I mean, but I think the way Tom presented is the right way to look at it. We need to mark to a standard, right? And the, you know, constituents already complain about the quality of our roads, and our standard is now what, 70s. So I don't think we want to drop below that. And what this is saying, just to maintain the existing standard, obviously have to prioritize them. It's $2 million a year. It's a lot of budget.
I think that the standard should be based upon the experience of most drivers in the city, right? So the highest volume areas that are the worst need to have the most attention first. Those areas with the least traffic that still, you know, are okay, you know, they're gonna get done eventually. But you can't spend this kind of money sustainably.
No, but you're talking about how to implement the standard. I guess I'm talking about
What
what
I'm saying is,
standard we want to
standard needs
set.
to be calibrated to what we can do and pay for, and yet conduct the highest traffic in those areas in the best possible way. So
I would suggest this is a much bigger conversation
Yeah.
than we have the capacity to deal with
sorry,
today.
it's 12.
But you've raised a really interesting awareness for me. And when I think about what our road conditions are and what our constituents say to me, I totally get it. And the amount that we're putting in is barely triage. So if we keep doing what we're doing, the issue is gonna get bigger, is what this is telling me. It's telling me the same thing about the shared use pads. So how do we set up time to have this conversation outside of this setting? Because we could use 2 hours right now. We're not going to.
But before you do, I just have one more question about shared use path performance. Is there a standard of construction that we could think about changing, you know, bigger base, you know, something that where we anticipate then the new path will last longer and won't need so
Absolutely.
many.
And so, yeah, construction standards have improved over time, and all roads in the city are not built equally. So certain roads, we use Old Farm
Old
Road as
Farm
an
Road.
example, right? And I mentioned it earlier. I think we're gonna find out how it's not built to today's standard. A road maybe that was just built in, let's say, Spear Meadows, that might hold up a lot longer with different pavement types and improvements. So, and again, this is all model prediction. It can't take into account all of those factors. And this gets refined. The more we go out and collect the data, the better these predictive models will get locally too.
So let me ask you a slightly different question. Like when we're planning to build all these new paths in the next year or two, Spare, you know, Heinsberg, et cetera, do we have choices as to the standards and how those shared use paths get built?
Yeah, we have.
And are there different standards which then would indicate less maintenance going forward, and how do we make those trade-offs?
We do. We have a public works standard now. We adopted in 24. In the past, it was sort of approved kind of with the development. So we do have a standard now that specifies the materials, the pavement type, et cetera, which years ago we did not. We use sort of individual engineers who propose things, public works will review and approve it. We defer to V-Trans standards. But this is a detailed discussion. I'll just use an example really quickly. Dorset Farms, they use Shelburne limestone as the base. We're finding, if anybody's been to Dorset Farms and seen the condition of the roads out there, the reason that they are deteriorating is because of the base material used, right? That limestone is sort of pounded down. We had the opportunity to dig a road up out there recently, and we could actually see the top 4 inches. You could see the larger stone aggregate below, and that top 4 inches has really got pounded down. So that is not a material we let folks use anymore. Just as one small example of your larger point. Yeah.
And is that the same with shared use paths for developers that when they're doing it in their neighborhoods, did that happen?
Newer ones are required to meet those same public works standards. If we're going to be asked to accept them, they have to follow those standards.
Standards that were in place at the time they were approved.
Right.
So if we don't accept them for 10 years and we have new standards, I can't tell them, oh, you gotta go rebuild this because now I want different aggregate under there. That's not how we would be able to do it, but
You could just stop trees from putting roots underneath our shared use paths, that'd be great too.
No more street trees.
Yeah, no, the less trees now, like, can.
Where's the arborist?
Done.
Yes.
So, if Andrew's question is, are we value engineering our paving and our shared use paths? We are not. We have one standard that we build to. I think if your question then is there a higher standard? Should we relook at those DPW standards and see if there's a higher standard we could build to? I think that's a different thing.
That is the question.
But we are not.
Count future maintenance costs and what's the, put more up front now, but save more in the future, right? So that is a question.
And then I think Andrew, actually, you had questions at the first budget meeting about Hubbard. So just wanted to quickly go over that. This is a shared use project. North is to the left here, so the map fits on the screen. But sort of connecting shared use path across Hubbard over to Nolan Farm. And so eventually this is going to be a shared use path network that will get you all the way from the South Village neighborhood up to UVM and the hospital. And you want to talk to the schedule actually?
Sure. So this has been funded and in the works for a number of years through open space, cutting paths, bracket impact fees, and it went in front of DRB. The schedule has got pushed out. Design got changed, which pushed it out, and then our wetland delineation we had to redo. So we're looking at, it was originally planned for this fall. It is now planned for next spring. We just received our last permit that we needed this week. So that was kind of the last administrative milestone we needed to meet before we can put together the construction, the bid package. And so that is going to be our last step before getting it out to bid.
That's a parking lot, a shared use path.
Yes.
Is there lighting in the parking lot or just bollards?
There's some low lighting in the parking lot,
Bollards?
no more than 2 tins tall was what it was decided. But with some landscaping to shield lights and headlights from the 2 homes that are right there. And some kind of entry where there's a map of the path network, a couple benches, bike racks.
How do you terminates at the edge of the South Point property?
It ties into the existing sidewalk and path. We have an easement that goes through that little sliver into
There's a
the
sewer
corner.
pump there or something, right? I think there's a bunker, and there's a sidewalk and a bunker there, and then it's adjacent to the street.
It ties right into, the corner of
So
where,
it will go.
Yeah.
Okay, all the way through.
yes.
If you have a diagram of that someday, like an engineering diagram, has all the stuff on? Oh, okay, oh, okay.
It's also in the DRB, and we'll do the full set of plans.
So when this project was approved by the council in 2023, I think it was, they included lighting. That conversation has come up a number of times. They have lightings in a park that is closed after dusk. In a dark sky area is something that, I know I question, I know there are other councilors that have questioned it. It takes 2 of us to bring it up to the council. How much time do we have between when you go out to bid to be able to say, to revisit the question of whether it's gonna have lighting? At the council level.
So you can revisit, I mean, we can install it and you can revisit it. You can revisit that.
No, I understand. I mean,
But my point is, I don't know how to.
I'm saying, how much time is it before you're ready to put it out to bid?
It could be less than a month. We have the draft bid package together, so, and we would have to restart DRB and state permitting anytime plans change.
Let's just.
If you just eliminate the lights, you have to restart DRB.
Yes.
We would have to go back for an amendment.
I'd want to make sure we check for sure, you know.
Well, you
Yeah.
could also
Could be
build it,
administrative,
but not turn it on.
Right.
If we decide.
Yep, and there's all sorts of technology where it can stay very, very low level until something is sensed in a specific area. There's but we made sure to keep them.
So I didn't quite hear you. So how tall is the light gonna be again?
I think they are at 12 feet.
So
They're-
it's like a.
It's a pedestrian scale lighting.
Street, okay.
Yeah, it's a pedestrian.
Like a
scale.
gas lamp style?
It is our, like an ornamental fixture, I believe, so yeah. We have to look at the exact,
There's already a street light in that area too.
at the, on the old farm and right at the entrance, yeah. And there were only, I think there were only 4 that went in, kind of at the corners.
Yeah.
We eliminated most of the lights after.
So this is part of a, this is part of a bike path or shared use path that would start at South Point and maybe go to Spear Street and the hospital. So it would be used as a potentially a commuter thing.
Absolutely.
And last I knew in the darker times, during commuter time, you need a light.
I think it's the parking.
It's just part of it.
The first 2 of the lights are on the parking lot with like a section of the path, but then it would go into a section with no lights.
Might someone park there to drive to, then bike to the hospital?
So I have a number of additional slides that council has already seen about Kenny's path and open space. Unless there's a strong desire to have Erica go through those. I was going to forego them at the moment. Is that okay, Jesse? Or
Well, they were really included as a resource for you if you wanted to
Yeah.
link back up the Penny conversation, so
Right.
totally defer to you on how we want to use this next half hour.
I think I'd like to defer them.
And the only thing that changed is FY 26, we have some more numbers, and FY 27, the proposed is in there. If you have questions, definitely, I'm happy to.
I
answer
just
those.
want to get back to the question. I hope, sorry, I hope that we're not telling you all to not submit plans so that we again start.
No,
Okay, those, just want to be clear.
Tom, very quickly, are the paving results and the shared use assessment results available online to the community?
in a limited capacity, so I think we have some PDFs of the general scores. You couldn't get in there and look at every little sidewalk crack that was marked, that's within the software, I kind of showed you a screenshot of that. I don't know the capabilities of what we could share with the software sitting here right now. And then same for roads.
We would have to go through us and GIS and choose what to show.
I was thinking there's gonna be a future, so Anna is here, a future integrating that PCI data with the set data with traffic count data we had. We could look at that part of it.
Yeah. So good, do we want to move on to item 9 now? Do you want to do item 9 while we eat? Just to toss it off, you know.
Do you want to eat on camera?
I don't care. Does anybody care? Do you?
It's not ready yet, it's still.
Oh, it's not
probably
ready?
not the
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to item 9 then. Well, thank you very much, Erica. I appreciate it. Good data. Big year ahead. Many big years ahead.
Take away my control, Justin,
Sure.
before I do something.
So moving on to item 9, which is the budget discussion for the council for all documents.
So just a couple of thoughts and observations. One, I know these budget presentations this year are a little different from what some of you have seen because it's such a lean budget year. There's not a lot of budget to present to you. So we did want to use the opportunity to talk about some of the other things that the council has had conversation about. So thank you for your patience with that. 2, I do want to note that we're going to lose Steve and our finance team at 1. to software implementation, our new finance system implementation meeting. 3, I want to note that on Monday night, you also have time on your agenda for council discussion as well. So I think you can have whatever conversation you want to have now in this 30 minutes. But in the next 2 meetings, we're going to need to know what you want us to put in the final budget that you're going to approve to send to the voters. So we have today, we have Monday night, and then we have January 5th. And then on January 12th, you're going to need to send a budget to the voters. So what would be most helpful to us is to know, are there areas where you want to have additional conversation based on what you've heard today or heard on the first? Are there additional data points? We have put together a memo that you'll get tomorrow with the warrant agenda with those additional data points you've asked for to date. But are there additional things you'd like us to start working on for January 5th? Or do you want to have conversation among yourself?
Can we talk quickly about the cemetery admin position? I did have an opportunity to follow with Peter Taylor, who kind of explained to me like his vision and John Simpson's vision is that the role is like it's more of a data role, clerks on those GIS data, documents. It's not a hands-on, fix headstones, wear gloves kind of role. And is that what you had in mind when you're putting this together?
So I had both in mind. We also have other GIS capacity. We have an executive assistant at Public Works who does the administrative support. That if we had somebody guiding that work, we could call on other resources for that. So to me, it is both things and other professionals that we would bring into that work. I'm not expecting to hire a GIS person for cemeteries because we have a GIS person.
So the question is really then if this cemetery administrator is going to receive all that support from other staff, then how much of a role it really is. Maybe like a really small part of one person's time, if that person can rely on multiple folks to do the meat of the work.
Well, I think somebody still needs to own it.
Yes, but do we need a new FTE to do that?
Well, we need some part of an
It's only a part of an FTE.
Right, but
Just trying to marry the
No, I
two together
understand.
to
But that's,
to
I just
maximize
I
the
just want to
potential.
understand your thought process now.
So
Because just for the cemetery,
Yeah.
based upon what you just said and what I
we
understand.
talked about this at the,
It's like maybe a tenth of an FTE, and if it was just that, say, is there someone that we can identify that can just do that?
No.
Instead of hiring somebody new?
I don't believe with all of the priority capital projects and analysis that we have on our plate right now, I think we are all at about 1.2 FTEs, right? So I am not comfortable just adding it on. If you tell me you don't want to add a position, we'll figure it out.
Just hold on, so.
But I'm trying to answer the
I
question.
want to jump in, because we talked about this at the Sexton's meeting 2 days ago. And, once the sexton or the cemetery administrator is up and running, it may be a very small portion. But the process of getting from where we are now to having the administration for these cemeteries set up is going to take a chunk of time. So the question that was asked at the meeting was, how much of that FTE, 10% or 40% or 30% was being allocated to the
City center.
no, to the sextons? And does it have sort of the startup load compared to the ongoing maintenance load sort of thought about?
I might suggest that we are micromanaging. That there is, the proposal was a position that has 2 things. One was the cemetery and the other was city center. And it was put together that is a full-time position. And whether the first year it's 60% something and 40% another is not necessarily the level of detail that we as a council need to get involved in, but rather is the professional staff in terms of what is needed.
So yeah, I'm not
I
asking
feel
that
like we can
allocation,
answer
so
the
let me ask my
question
question again, because I wasn't asking. So we certainly need someone to administer the cemeteries, but I guess what you're also saying is we need additional headcount to help with city center.
Yes. I think, I appreciate the comments and about not micromanaging. I think both of these areas are very much emerging needs in the city. So I don't know right now what I'm assuming is in a startup year for both, it's gonna be about 50-50. And then as we develop systems and plans for cemeteries and it becomes a little more administrative, that might go down, but as we open Garden Street up all the way and we have 2 events a month from SB3C and we have whatever else vibrancy we're gonna have with all the commercial space fit up, that may increase. I may come back to you next year and say, actually, what we really need is 4 people in city center. I don't think that's gonna happen, but I think the reality is both of these are new and emerging priorities. So instead of saying we need 2 FTEs to do that, what I'm trying to recommend is give us someone who's gonna own both of those things and let's see where we go.
The clarification helps.
And just one, add a note as we go through this, I think it's really helpful to be able to, properly account for these different functions, so to properly account for how much money we spend on a cemetery, so we know like how much taxpayers are funding for that asset. So as this person is hired, so it's hard, it'd be good to like be able to allocate time to the cemetery function to know that, to do the accounting properly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Tom and his team have been doing a lot of work on our work order system to build in that ability to do that kind of staff analysis and materials analysis by all the things they do. So I've heard and understood and fully agree with that intention. What else do you, what else do you want to talk about?
You want to have a discussion about pennies with that? Because that's like a big, we're gonna be building all these paths and we're gonna start to deteriorate unless we fund it, right?
So pennies paths, that penny terminates in
30 is the last year of
the
collecting.
last year to collect.
Yeah.
So we're going 6, so there's quite a few years. So, I mean, council needs to talk about and decide whether we would like to have a ballot item to deflect or, defer a certain percentage of the collection to maintenance.
Yeah.
Would you want to have the discussion now? That's the question.
I think it's part of a bigger discussion that came up from the slides that Tom showed us about both the paths and the streets. I think there's a big discussion that needs to be had about, are we gonna come up with $3 million a year for roads? Are we gonna come up with $500,000 or $1 million a year for sidewalks? And if we're not gonna do that, how are we gonna manage?
Well, just looking at paths by itself right now, the question is, do we need to prepare ballot language through the legal counsel, right?
If we take
Put on
money from pennies for path.
Yeah, so we have to decide, do you want to have the discussion now, or do you want to put it on a future agenda within the next month?
How much money is currently in the pennies for paths account?
And the balance. At the end of FY 25, it was 885,000.
Did you say 885?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And how much of that is allocated, that's pre-allocated to something?
all of the money that we anticipate bringing in is allocated. After FY 30, it takes about 3 years to spend down the rest of the ballots of not collecting. But we have programmed everything that is planned to be brought in.
So
Plus the 300 to the I-89 bridge.
So if
Right,
we
that's
if we
included
take
in
money
that.
from pennies for paths, we don't do the work we have allocated with that money. And that money can only provide a very small portion of the $500,000 a year just to stay even.
So we also have
So
offer
the
dollars, right?
question's a lot bigger than pennies for paths.
But we also have offer dollars, right? $1.8 million on the 9-1.
But again, this is an ongoing issue.
No, I know, but that, that money, that chunk that could, do a lot over the next few years. Right, if we chose to spend it on this.
I guess the point I want to make again is that Writers have a qualitative experience, right? The
Yeah.
analysis did a quantitative, right?
Yeah.
You can pick a number, whatever you want, but the real, the effort should go into fixing the hotspots, because those are what people remember and see immediately, right? The
Yeah.
question is, do we have enough money to fix the hotspots and make people happier about their experience riding on the paths, the sidewalks? And where should that extra money come from? Right, we already have the pennies for paths, right? It never incorporated in maintenance, right?
That's right.
When you're gonna build new infrastructure, you always need to think about maintenance, so.
So,
Well, let's pause it
so
then.
are we having the discussion now, or are we going to have the discussion in January?
That's a good question, and that's.
So
that's what the
that will depend upon whether I ask a question.
Can I ask Colin a question?
Sure.
What is the date they need to approve ballot language? If they wanted to put something on the town meeting day ballot for this March?
It looks like, just looking, so we prepared a memo last year that went before you with the same question. Those ultimately turned down and didn't go on the ballot. It'd probably be, we have to post a warning no later than February 1st, I think. Last year was the March 4th was the town meeting day. I think we're March 3rd. So we're probably at February 1st would be the first day that we would have to post. And then
I think Holly prints ballots.
so that'd be pretty much the end of January,
Yeah.
the Christmas ballot.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much, I mean, we don't have a number yet, right? I mean, like, we don't have projects yet because we still need the software. We don't have much of projects. So in my mind, it's actually premature to.
So how many meetings do we have
premature to
between
what?
now and
Premature
February?
To think about changing pennies of path on the ballot, but I would, I think we should be talking about, you know, if Tom comes up and says, I need $500,000 next year, these are the projects, whether we think we could, you know, on that I'd offer.
So if we have two meetings.
Yeah.
Three meetings before we need to let.
You have Monday night, you have January 5th, and you have January 12th on the budget. So you could have more.
Well, no, but I mean, if, as an alternative to what I think I hear Andrew suggesting, which is that maybe we have a discussion, but we don't consider putting it on the ballot. If other people.
I want to have the discussion whether to put it on the ballot, and I want to vote on it, but I want to do it now.
Yeah,
Because-
okay,
Yeah, because
yeah.
I want to have more discussions.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to do, if that's
I agree
possible.
with that.
Okay.
Yeah, my feeling is we need to get, I think what Andrew said is get the projects and then determine the financing mechanism and make it a multi-year plan. I don't think we should be trying to rush to put this on the ballot item for March, but I think we can be prepared.
We
to
can
have
put it on the ballot and say up to a percentage at the discretion of the council to spend it or not. We don't have to say we're gonna take 10% and definitely spend it,
So-
but we want the ability to do it. We can't do it today.
I think right now, it looks like two people don't want to put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
Two of us may be interested, no idea where you are. But we need information.
Yeah.
And whether or not we take a vote after that information is your decision as chair. But so what information do we want? Do you want to
I'm
know
leaning
the
towards not
project?
putting it on the ballot.
What?
I'm leaning towards not putting it on the ballot. So that's three.
It's a lean.
That's a link, it's a strong lean, especially from the feedback that we've gotten from the Bike Ped Committee and from the mandate for which that money was set up. So I am
That
reticent.
mandate was one ballot item. We can always, we put another ballot item there and the public votes and they can vote it down if they want.
I understand that, and if we're gonna put it on a ballot item, I think it would be appropriate to give enough time for it to be marketed so that the public knows what they're voting on. To make an informed decision.
It's a little bit easier to understand than a tip strip. Let me put it that way.
I understand that.
Yeah, so, you know, I changed my mind on this too. had been leading over the summer to cleaning up, but. And we obviously could talk about this and vote, but knowing it's all been allocated, it's all the CIP, the public expects these passed. Knowing we do have this, you know, close to $2 million pot of opera inspired dollars. I just wouldn't want to upset that apple cart right now with the penny for pass.
But if we have that, I mean, so we need information. We have that pot of money, but some of it needs to go for the bridge in the future.
It's all allocated.
No, not opera.
I mean, that's what I mean.
If all
Well,
allocated to
ARPA, some of the ARPA may need to be used if we have trouble.
Capital
with the
Okay.
project.
all that money has been allocated to.
I do think that's important to be having the discussion with the public about the information we're seeing here to,
Yes,
Oh,
to show, I
Yeah.
mean, this will be relatively new information and set this, sets the stage for. We have some significant maintenance issues. We need to decide on what basis we're gonna recommend future budgets.
Yeah.
To the public. Is it to improve that standard? Is it to take the hot items? And kind of check those off, which by default will improve the standard to some degree, but meanwhile, the paving and the shared use path are getting older and more used, so I think I'd like to see the meetings we do have incorporate a pretty robust agenda item where the public sees this information, gets the heads up, and then a ballot item and financing mechanisms and a prioritization from your team get incorporated into, if really will be next year's budget, whatever the financing mechanism is, but
but so on
There's
that
some
note
options.
though, because we're talking about this year's budget, should we be thinking about further increasing the amount from the general fund that we are allocating annually for these needs, right? We went from, 240 up to 140. Should we in this budget go to 200? I think we should and figure out how to fund that.
I think well, let's have this
and
discussion.
how do we stay at 3.3?
No, I understand that's the question. What else gets cut? But seeing these numbers, I think
Let's get the numbers, right?
So,
Let's have
so,
it.
so what numbers this is what we presented to you today, the data we currently have. We're gonna need if you want something else, what specifically do you want? And I definitely can't pull it off for Monday night.
Yeah.
Not sure we can pull it off for the 5th, so it would be helpful to know
well, so
what
I mean,
additional things you want to cut.
if there was a magic wand, which I know there's not, it would be, is there a way to further increase the amount budgeted for shared use path and sidewalk maintenance, but stay within the budget constraints we've articulated?
Yeah, what do you want us to cut?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that is your.
That's the question, and
Are there CIP projects that could be deferred? Things that are not critical.
I think the question extends beyond the sidewalks and to the roads as well, because what was shown for the roads is showing the exact same issue.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the question in my mind for the roads is how much of that projected maintenance is because of studs? And maybe it's just a teeny bit, but maybe it's a lot.
But we're not getting rid of
like to know.
studs anytime soon.
Well, but
That's a state issue.
10-year projection.
I understand. But the road paving issue, when you look at the graphs, has the same issue that the sidewalks do.
But we do have a robust road paving program. We've been with paved
Robust,
roads.
But it's not
We have
robust.
it For the sidewalks and shared path.
When you say it's robust, it's 1.2 million, but this is showing that 1.5 million isn't enough. So it's not robust.
It's been.
It's bigger than
happened.
sidewalks.
And we can show the public we've done a lot, right?
Sorry, what did you decide? What do we got?
We didn't decide anything. We're not cutting anything.
I think, here's a proposal that we, in a city council meeting, we have the same data that you showed today, right? And then we have a further discussion about what level we want to finance it and where the money would come from, and especially for this next budget, do we want to increase it and where would that money come from? So, yeah. And then we can talk about, possible, pennies but change as well.
I may have missed this. I miss a lot of things. What is in the current budget for repair or maintenance of the existing?
40.
I think that's what it shared use path 40 for sidewalk, and then
It's
152 total.
152,000.
By the way, is there a benefit to combining those things? Like, is there a reason to keep it separate? What if we determine actually we need more work on sidewalks and shared use, but why do we have those as two separate buckets?
They're both relatively new budget items. We weren't really funding this work.
Right.
So we split them out. in the budget.
It would be provide flexibility to just have a pot.
So, sure, yeah, so it would give us more flexibility. I think we've separated them out with the intention of doing what you previously, in our previous conversation, talked about accounting for what we've actually spent.
And
So our ability to be transparent about.
But you can account for it. But it makes, if you want us to account for it, keep them separate. Like if you want to detail, you know, would you spend here, would you spend there? It's a lot easier for me to code bills, frankly.
so you don't feel constrained though, like I can't go over my 40 budget for sidewalks and I can't tap into the 100. I mean, like.
They have done that.
We can,
for
I got administrative.
You can.
I can't move sidewalk maintenance to ambulance.
Yeah.
Billing, but I can within a public works budget.
Yeah, you can do fun shit. Maybe at that next meeting agenda item, if we had a list, a prioritized list of the hotspots that could be fixed.
Hold on. So you're getting ahead of the work you've already charged us to do a little bit here, right? We're trying to get that prioritization where we're taking the safe route to the school. We're taking the 12,880 different sidewalk cracks and upheavals. We're taking public requests for hotspot issues, and we're trying to pull all that together for you. So
We're not there.
and you're kind of telling us then which specific tree routes you'd like us to address at that point, almost sounds like. So I would much rather wait to deliver that priority list
Okay.
and then have you tweak that ranking, right?
Okay,
I
I
think
didn't know where you were.
question though.
Yeah, we're getting going.
If you, and this is where I don't know the limitations of the work that the city, whatever the new name is. But if you took that database and said anything under 30 rating, would it generate a list and then you could, is that a use of that database?
Sure.
Could you dollarize that in any way?
We can do that. But I think to the point Tim was making before, we're getting to is
Yeah, I
in
understand.
different roads, you might allow that certain neighborhood road to get down to a 50. And you might not want Dorset Street to get below 75, or you pick a number, right? So you don't just pick that lowest road, because that's not where you want your dollars to go. And sometimes you want to put dollars into a road that's actually about maybe a 78 or something to bring it back up, because it costs more if it gets way down here to redo. So it's not just as simple as all that. And I have other slides I didn't put in here that gets into the science of that, if you will.
So I think what I'm hearing is that, it will be hard to pull this off for a town meeting day ballot, and maybe there's not interest in doing that anymore, or a majority interest in doing that. But that we all really want to get to a more data informed approach of how to combine all of these data sources into, a more intentional long-term plan in the future. And with that more intentional long-term plan, have a funding mechanism for it, or a financing plan for it. And we could take we could do that over the first half of, or the second half of FY 26 in order to prepare for the FY 28 budget. Like do that more intentionally over the next 6 months in order to go into the next budget planning year with a more intentional plan.
Yeah. And for me, what Tom presented today, which I really appreciate, highlighted for me a problem that we have that is bigger than I knew it was. And I think bigger than any of us have talked about. And it's like, oh, we had a culture problem in the fire department and we fixed that over X number of years. Well, we got a funding problem on our roads and shared use paths, and we need to bring attention to that and find solutions. It's not gonna be, we're just gonna make a vote today and have it fixed.
Jesse, I just make one, I realized I don't know if I was the first one to use it, but I wanted to make it clear that on the penny for paths, we were using the word allocated. They have not been officially allocated.
Right.
They have
Designated.
they have been programmed and planned, because I
Yes.
just want to make
Yeah.
sure that
Yeah.
that we're all very clear
Yeah.
on that.
And remember that money multiplies, it's used for leverage to get grants. And if that money is taken for maintenance, then you're gonna lose 2 or 3 times the grant money.
Could we folks remember a sec, there was a chart here which showed, penny for path versus grants, which I was surprised that it didn't show that. It was on page, I just no page numbers, but maybe page 27?
Of Tom's presentation.
Yeah, I know we're getting close to the witching hour here, but it showed the grant revenue much smaller than we anticipated on that refined levy.
So this is what was actually reimbursed that year, so these are actuals.
Okay.
Not the grant awards that were received.
Oh, I see.
So this does not add up to the amount of grant money we will be using over
Okay.
the next X amount of years.
Okay.
I think last year's budget presentation might have had the one that you're talking about.
And one assumption, I don't know culturally, where we want to go with this, but my understanding is all positions are fully funded in the budget. So there could be some assumption made around an attrition rate. And we also, I believe, preserve the 16% buffer and have that 8 to 16% coverage. I'm forgetting the name of it within the budget. I'm gonna look at Martha.
Fund balance.
What?
It'll be
Buffer?
kind of a requirement for,
Oh,
surplus.
surplus.
Yeah.
Surplus, yes.
I'm sorry. So we're keeping that at the 16%. So I'm wondering if a way to get to the CPI number and potentially increase that spending amount based on some rationale might be to make an assumption on attrition, knowing we have the surplus at a healthy balance as positions, as we identify available positions to fill.
So-
Candidates.
So happy for you guys to have whatever conversation you want. We do have the data, Elizabeth, you requested on the health insurance and the FTEs. Benefits analysis in a memo to you for Monday night.
Okay.
So you can have your conversation now about that if you want, but just want to know there's more data coming to you on that.
Just a buy.
Anything else?
One quick one, just maybe for Monday too. I didn't see if we split out the contribution of commercial tax, property tax versus residential, the way we had done last year in the budget to the business contribution.
Like, you mean percent of the grand list
Uh,
or percent of the taxes they pay?
taxes paid, yeah.
I don't. We have done that analysis in the past. I'm not sure as part of the budget. I don't think we can get that into your agenda for Monday night, but we might be able to do a back of the envelope analysis between now and Monday night.
I thought we were splitting that pretty normally and we just didn't see it in the packet.
I mean, we know, it's in the CAMA system, it's in the database, we just need to do the analysis.
But whenever that might be available.
You know how other communities fund sidewalk maintenance? Is it always on the municipality? Is it sometimes on the property owner whose sidewalk
I think you're thinking about who clears sidewalks,
not maintenance?
maintenance of shoveling snow.
No, I mean maintenance of
houses, but not
sidewalk.
like patching holes.
Well, if it's on her, right.
It's all right,
Or
we,
easement.
municipalities are responsible.
Yeah,
Say shovel in front of your house.
Yeah.
No, yes.
I've worked for communities that do that, that you're required to maintain your sidewalk after storms and stuff, but not actual maintenance, yeah.
No, concrete asphalt. I don't know. That's a good idea.
That'd be terrible.
We're after 1 o'clock. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll go on to item 10, which is other business. Is there any other business? Okay, then look for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Need a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks to all the department heads.